Chapter 47:15. Perhaps she simply didn't realize that one wrong step would lead to another. One day, she, the dignified patriarch of the Forgotten River Dragon clan, would actually fall into such a predicament. Arbor was expressionless. His gaze shifted to the Dragon clan's patriarch as he said indifferently with a mocking expression, "I just want you to personally experience what kind of feeling is called deprivation. Didn't you want to disregard my wishes and deprive me of the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl in my body? Didn't you want to take the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl for yourself? No matter how nicely you make it sound, you're still trying to murder me without regard for your own family. It's like this to mother, and it's also like this to me. Could it be that this mother and daughter pair were born to owe the Forgotten River Dragon clan a huge debt and had to repay it the moment they were born? How does it feel to be deprived?" Arbor coolly glanced at the Dragon clan's patriarch as he asked indifferently. The Dragon clan's patriarch's wrinkled old face was instantly filled with resentment and unquenchable emotions. "Arbor. This." Long Qian was so angry that she couldn't speak. Even the words, "little bastard," that she wanted to say were stuck in her throat due to the immense pain. She was in pain, in too much pain. This pain originated from the fear and despair in the depths of her bones and blood. Very quickly, the raging fury that she had just accumulated was suppressed by a deep sense of fear. She had felt it. She had truly felt it. Her water spirit, her 9th layer of spirit water, was currently being forcefully extracted from her body by that terrifying deprivation power. No, she couldn't do this. She simply didn't know what would happen to a transcendent realm cultivator after they lost their water spirit. Would their cultivation decrease along with it? Or would they merely lose the power of their water spirit? She couldn't use this power in the future. Or would she lose her cultivation after falling from a tall building to the bottom? She didn't know. This kind of fear of the unknown caused people to involuntarily sink into despair. Long Qian suppressed an inexplicable panic that was difficult to suppress in her eyes. She hastily turned to look at the little stoic and shouted angrily, Stop. What do you want to do? Mu Qiao. Don't forget that I'm still your grandmother." Arbor couldn't help but sneer. He hovered above the entrance of the sacrificial sea and coldly stared at the shouting dragon patriarch. Not only was Long Qian stubborn and self-opinionated, she was also hilarious. At this point, she still had the face to claim kinship with her. "What were you doing in the first place? You can't do that." Long Qian screamed at the top of her lungs as she screamed at Arbor, "Mu Qiao, I'm your grandmother. You can't take away my water spirit power, no." Arbor didn't give her a chance to continue talking nonsense. At this moment, the layer of deprivation power that had fused into her body was continuously pouring in, gradually filling her Dantian star field. This power was too domineering and powerful, so much so that she had a feeling that it was difficult to grasp. Now, she could only slowly get used to it and use it more often. Long Qian let out a shrill scream. Her body suddenly fell limply to the ground, and a hot current enveloped her body. She shivered from the heat and tilted her neck slightly to the side as she screamed in pain. "Gee, grandmother." Long Shangyun swam a dozen meters forward in trepidation and reached out to catch the dispirited Long Qian. However, Long Qian rushed forward first and supported the deathly pale dragon patriarch. He hastily asked, "Gee, grandmother, what happened to you?" Chapter 47:16. To be honest, Long Huan and his sister didn't know what was going on even after watching for a long time. However, when they heard the little stoic say, "How does it feel to be deprived?" their hearts were vaguely stirred. Could it be that the little stoic used some strange power on grandmother and deprived her of something inside her body? However, grandmother was only a normal cultivator and didn't have a mermaid pearl inside her body. What did the little stoic deprive her of? Long Qian's entire body was soaked in seawater. Her defensive barrier had long disappeared without her noticing. Long Qian's entire body was lishless, and her hair was wet from the seawater and drooped on her face. Her fishtail drooped heavily, and her face was lifeless. Long Huan clenched his fists and looked in the little stoic's direction, unable to restrain his anger. You! What did you do to grandmother? You're too ruthless. Long Xiangyun hastily tugged at him. Speaking of Long Huan, he was truly an extremely contradictory person. Previously, when he found out that grandmother wanted to kill Arbor, he truly lamented in his heart. To be honest, the little stoic only had a terrible temper and was a bit of a conman, but she didn't have a bad heart. When grandmother wanted to kill the little stoic, he naturally objected to it 1,000 times over. But now, it was the other way around. When he saw his grandmother, whom he had always respected, lying in the crook of his arms on the verge of death, he couldn't help but resent the little stoic in his heart for being too ruthless and not knowing her limits. Therefore, it could be said that Long Huan was a contradictory and indecisive person. Whenever he encountered a problem, he would waver. The little stoic had interacted with the siblings for a long time, so she believed that she understood their temperaments. Now that she saw his expression, although she didn't think much of it, she wasn't very angry. This person was just like that because of his temperament. How bad could he be? That wasn't necessarily the case. How good could he be? That wasn't necessarily the case either. This fellow was born in a peaceful era, so he was rather suitable to be an idle young master who tended to flowers and plants. If he really had to shoulder the future of a certain family, with his wavering temperament, it wasn't that Arbor was looking down on him, but it really wasn't too suitable. In the face of the little stoics, "I'm too lazy to pay attention to you" gaze, young Master Long simply had nowhere to vent his anger. He reached out to support the Dragon Clan leader who had already fainted, and hurriedly took out 2 pills and stuffed them into her mouth. "Let's end this matter here," Long Qi said coldly. "Grandmother was in the wrong first, but now, you are paying her back in her own coin. You are paying her back in full." His voice abruptly stopped. Suddenly, she saw her grandmother release a soul-sealing arrow from between her fingers, shooting it straight at Qiao Mu. Long Huan's eyes widened and his handsome face contorted. He pushed the old woman away and shouted, "Grandmother! Grandmother!" The blood drained from Long Xiangyun's face in an instant. Grandmother actually released the treasure of the forgetful River Dragon clan, the soul-locking arrow. Why? What kind of deep hatred did grandmother have with the stoic face that she would actually release a holy weapon like the soul-locking arrow? She wanted to obliterate Qiao Mu's body and soul. Once he was hit by the soul-locking arrow, Arbor's soul would completely disappear from this world, and it would be irreparable. Long Qian had opened his eyes at some point, and his hair was disheveled as he guffawed like a madman. Chapter 47:17. If I knew this day would come, I wouldn't have given birth to your mother. I even raised a little bastard like you. Long Qian glared at Arbor in shock and shouted harshly. Back then, Long Chuyun and Long Chuyu entered the Dragon Clan's sacred ground together. Chuyu came back covered in wounds, but your mother obtained the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. How can there be nothing fishy about this? Your mother knows best what she did. Long Qian coughed out mouthfuls of blood, and she looked like she had gone mad. She didn't have long to live anyway, and her body couldn't support her anymore. Moreover, after losing the 9th layer of the spiritual water, she could already feel that her cultivation was dissipating bit by bit. She couldn't bear the feeling of falling from the transcendent god realm to the bottom of the valley at her age. She could no longer be like a youngster who could make a comeback after a fall. She had no chance. Before she died, it would be a great merit if she could solve the Dragon Clan's current problem and drag this black-hearted little stoic into hell. The 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl is an inheritance passed down from generation to generation of the dragon clan. It's a treasure that can improve bloodline power. Your mother took it for herself and refused to return it. What use do I have for a daughter like her? The soul-locking arrow glowing with green light stopped in midair amidst Long Qian's agitated roar. The tip of the arrow pointed straight at Arbor's heart and trembled. It was as if it could pierce through his heart in the next second. Do you think I'm doing all this for myself? Long Qian shouted harshly. I'm doing this for the future of the entire dragon clan. You only covet your own benefits and see the small benefits in front of you. Which person is willing to look at the future of the clan? Who is willing to make a small sacrifice? The 10,000-year mermaid pearl is originally a family item, and it should be passed down through the generations of the Wangchuan dragon clan. It shouldn't be given to your mother and left to you alone. Long Qian shouted coldly. Didn't you ask me if I sent people to Sikong planet to kill your mother? Yes. Long Qian said coldly. If she had been willing to take responsibility for the family and handed over the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl earlier, there wouldn't have been so many troublesome things that followed. The same goes for you. Long Qian said coldly, you're just as cold-blooded and selfish as your mother. You don't care about your own family. Selfish and cold-blooded people like you are destined not to go far in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, Long Qian suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the soul-lock arrow in midair. Long Qian and his sister let out a sorrowful scream. Their eyes were fixed on the soul-locking arrow as it flew towards Arbor. Grandmother. Long Shi slid forward, but he knew he could not catch up to the speed of the arrow. In the blink of an eye. In the gap between light and shadow, a red figure suddenly rushed to Arbor's side and blocked her front. Countless streams of wood spirit power surged out and firmly caught the soul-locking arrow, which was chasing after him at high speed, between the vines. Arbor's heart thumped heavily. When she looked up, she saw the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turn around and wink at her jokingly. Jojo, what are you hanging there for? The little stoic's anger instantly surged, and she glared at him irritably. Stop talking nonsense with a cheeky smile. If I couldn't block that arrow just now, what would you have done? Chapter 47:18. How can I not block it? He pursed his lips, looking unconvinced. It's just a holy weapon. It hasn't been used for many years, so it's not very nimble even if I want to use it. Look, this holy weapon's effect isn't that great. Arbor rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. Suddenly, her expression changed, and she shouted at the man in front of her, "Get out of the way." How can I get out of the way? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He pretended not to hear the little fellow's exasperated cry and turned his head to continuously transmit wood spiritual power. In the boiling seawater in front of him, a lush green wonder appeared. Strands of wooden vines swayed in the seawater, and thousands of colorful flowers bloomed in the water. If it weren't for the urgency of the situation, Arbor would definitely be very happy to admire the beautiful scenery in front of her. The rotten peach blossom's control of wood's spiritual power had already reached the pinnacle of perfection. But that soul-locking arrow, once it locked onto its ultimate target, it couldn't stop. Looking at its stubborn appearance, it definitely wouldn't let her go. Zichen kept using her holy power to lock it down. She could lock it down for a while, but not forever. If you can move, go into the star domain and hide. I'll think of something. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal blinked at her and pretended to be relaxed. Don't worry, this soul-locking arrow is locked onto you. It has no effect on others. Arbor couldn't help but laugh bitterly when she heard that. She was hanging there stiffly because she couldn't move. Get out of the way. Arbor saw that the soul-locking arrow was about to break free from the binding of thousands of vines and couldn't help but be shocked. Zichen's hand was injured. It must have been injured when she fought with the 13th elder above. At this moment, she suddenly felt that she was in great danger, so she suddenly flashed to her side through the star domain and caught the soul-locking arrow. "Get out of here," Arbor roared at him fiercely. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned to look at her, aggrieved. "No." Arbor glared at him and roared anxiously, "Are you going to dodge or not? Quick! Buzz!" They watched as the soul-locking arrow broke free from the vine's encirclement and broke through the layers of defense laid out by the peach blossoms. In an instant, it flew in front of the two of them. Arbor felt his vision darken. His head was dizzy, and his heart was in his throat. "Rotten peach blossoms!" she shouted. The soul-locking arrow was already in front of them, but the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal caught it with one hand and held it tightly in his palm. Arbor saw the blood in his palm flowing down, and his eyes seemed to be filled with the color of blood. Long Qian couldn't help but laugh coldly when he saw this, and he forcefully propped up his tattered body before he said with a ridiculing expression, "Once the soul-lock arrow locks onto its target, then it's the outcome of not stopping until it's dead." In this world, who could resist the might of a saint artifact? A mocking look flashed across Long Qian's eyes. A cultivator who had not reached the ultimate god realm would not be able to fight back against a sacred weapon. Rotten peach blossom. Arbor's eyes narrowed and he shouted angrily, "Let go." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal thought to himself, "Why would I listen to you and let go?" Even he found the soul-locking arrow troublesome, let alone Jojo, who had not reached the transcendent god realm. Xiao Mu was so anxious that she kept struggling. "I have a way to deal with this thing," she said with a determined gaze. "You let go. Now." Who said that she was going to surrender? Chapter 47:19. It was just a divine weapon. It was not as if Arbor did not have one. Her left hand suddenly moved. While she was delighted, she hurriedly lifted her leg and pounced toward the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's arm. "Let go." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was shocked by her actions. He did not expect her to be released from the abyss of the sacrificial sea and jump into his arm. With this, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal abruptly loosened his grip, and the soul-locking arrow he was grasping stabbed towards Xiao Mu's heart at lightning speed. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's pupils shrank. He felt as if his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Arbor's figure suddenly disappeared into the sea. Along with the soul-locking arrow, she disappeared before everyone's eyes. Oh no! The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's heart pounded wildly. This divine weapon completely ignored space and followed Jojo into the star region. The moment Arbor entered the star region, she immediately felt the soul-locking arrow chasing after her. She could not help but curse under her breath. She quickly turned around and glared at the soul-locking arrow that was chasing after her. It was really a soul-locking technique. It had locked his soul and wouldn't let go. The power that the soul-locking arrow exuded made her not dare to act rashly. Arbor ran in front, weaving through flowers and trees. She could only watch as the soul-locking arrow pierced through dozens of peach blossom trees that were so thick that it would take 3 people to wrap their arms around them, leaving huge holes in the tree trunks. Her heart ached terribly. The soul-locking arrow caught up to her back and was about to pierce her head. Arbor quickly summoned the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron and blocked the attack. With a crisp, dang sound, the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron was obviously no match for this exceptionally ferocious soul-locking arrow. The huge cauldron body was knocked out of the cauldron, spinning in a circle in the air. As Arbor ran, she touched her left palm. There was no other way. The situation was critical. She could only use the Fushi sword in her hand to deal with the divine weapon in front of her. If he couldn't avoid this soul-locking arrow even if he hid in the star domain, then there was really no other way. Xiao Mu simply strode out of the star domain, circling the star domain sky with the soul-locking arrow in tow. After releasing an ear-piercing buzz, she swiftly gave chase with a shake of the arrow's tail. At the same time, Mo Lian, who was cultivating in the Phoenix Spring, seemed to have sensed something. She suddenly opened her phoenix eyes that were filled with murderous intent and looked sharply towards the sky. After the little fellow rushed out of the star field, it continued to run in the sea. She ran in a hurry and looked back as she ran. Just like that, she bumped into someone. Xiao Mu's forehead hurt from slamming into that person's body, so she angrily looked up at this door plank that was blocking her way. Young Master Ding hurriedly reached out to help her, but the little fellow rudely waved his hand away. Ding Yun looked at her with a straight face and said, "Are you hurt?" As he spoke, that soul-locking arrow had already circled around the seawater and locked onto its target, Xiao Mu, again, shooting swiftly towards the middle of her back. Young Master Ding frowned and turned to look at Long Qian, who was struggling on the verge of death. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes. How did Long Qian become so dispirited in such a short time? It seemed like she didn't have long to live. This is the soul-locking arrow of the Wangchuan Dragon Clan. Arbor didn't have time to talk to the person in front of him. He was concentrating on activating the Fushi sword hidden in his left hand. The situation was urgent and he couldn't think too much.
Chapter 47:20. Even though she hadn't fully gathered her soul remembrance, she couldn't care less. However, if she rashly used the Fushi Greatsword, she didn't know if she would alarm Master and Ant Master. If they disregarded everything and came again, would Heavenly Dao Budo go crazy? The soul-locking arrow was extremely powerful. Even when she used the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron to block it, it was still sent flying. If it came a few more times, she didn't know if the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron would be destroyed by this damned soul-locking arrow. She didn't dare to try again. Arbor lowered her eyes slightly and moved her left hand. The tip of the sword slowly emerged from the palm of his hand. Her complexion turned a bit pale. When the Fushi Greatsword was taken out of her body, it continuously absorbed the spiritual energy in her body as if it wanted to suck her dry. She already couldn't remember how powerful the Fushi Greatsword was when she took it out in the past. She hoped it could sever the soul-locking arrow. Otherwise she really didn't know how to resolve today's matter. Arbor took a deep breath, and her complexion abruptly changed and paled inch by inch. It was so obvious that Ding Yun, who was standing beside her, couldn't pretend he didn't see anything. "What are you doing?" Ding Yun reached out to grab her arm. Arbor dodged, but her body swayed weakly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was frightened by her actions. Arbor herself didn't know what her current situation was. However, Yuan Shichen saw it clearly. The little girl's slender body was like a thin leaf swaying in the wind and rain. Her entire body was almost transparent, as if her soul was about to jump out of her body. It was too frightening. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hastily kicked the water forward and shouted anxiously, "Stop, Jojo, don't!" Bam! A scorching waterspout abruptly swept up from the depths of the sea, separating Yuan Shichen and the little stoic at once. The dying Long Qian seemed to have a momentary lucidity before death. Her eyes emitted a terrifyingly bright light as she muttered, "Yes, it's open. The door to hell from the abyss of the sacrificial sea has opened. No one can struggle free from this power. Ha ha ha, the demonic sea beasts guarding the abyss of the sacrificial sea will devour all of you." "Grandmother, what are you talking about?" Long Shangyun shook Long Qian's body instinctively. "Stop it. Don't keep making mistakes and continue to make mistakes. Everything is negotiable. Discuss? Who am I going to talk to?" Long Qian turned around with a twisted expression on his face. The Forgotten River Dragon family will become the overlord of the ocean under the nourishment of the Millennium Mermaid Pearl. Perseverance above the river of forgetfulness. Ah, cough cough cough, cough cough. Long Xiangyun was so shocked that she quickly wiped the blood off the corner of her mouth. Grandmother. Tears streamed down Long Xiangyun's face as she wailed, "Is it that in your eyes, the future of the Forgotten River Dragon clan is more important than the facial paralysis, than father, than me, than brother, than anyone else?" Yes. Long Qian stared at Long Xiangyun in shock. It's difficult for your brother to take on such a huge responsibility. When the demonic sea beasts eat all of them, you'll have to help grandmother find the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl from the pile of corpses. Save your sister Shui Yuan. I can rest assured if I leave the future to Long Shui Yuan. A strange light shot out of Long Qian's eyes, and a joyful expression appeared on her face. She grabbed Long Xiangyun's arm tightly.
Chapter 47:21. However, Long Xiangyun only felt her grandmother's 5 fingers clawing at her, causing her to feel a chill from the bottom of her heart. The old woman seemed to have thought of something and suddenly took out a coffin from her spatial ring. Long Xiangyun's eyes widened in shock. Grandmother actually placed Sister Shui Yuan in a coffin and carried it around with her. So, grandmother had planned from the start to take out the shark pearl and give it to Long Shui Yuan as soon as she killed Arbor. Long Xiangyun couldn't help but shiver at the thought of this. Shui Yuan promised me that she would dedicate her life to the Forgotten River Dragon clan, the old woman said with a self-righteous expression. Let her keep the shark pearl for a while. When your brother's child grows up, let her hand over the 10,000-year-old shark pearl and pass it on to your brother's heir. Then, the future of our dragon clan will be passed down for generations to come. The old woman's eyes shone with a strange light as she said this. Long Xiangyun opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. She felt that the old woman was simply bewitched. For the illusory future of the dragon clan, she had been planning and scheming. She had even used her own grandson and granddaughter to scheme against them. I can't rely on my own son or grandson. I can only place my hopes on your brother's child. Long Xiangyun looked at her grandmother in a daze. Her brother didn't even have a wife now. How could she place her hopes on her brother's child? I've already chosen your elder brother's fiancée. Duo Shanmei of the Duo family has a good bloodline and talent. She is a good match for your brother. Since he can't take on the great responsibility of the dragon clan in the future, he must obey the arrangements and give birth to a smart and healthy heir for the Forgotten River Dragon clan. Long Xiangyun shivered again and looked at the old woman in a daze. So, back then, you wanted to kill my aunt because she didn't obey your arrangements. The old woman probably didn't love Long Shui Yuan that much. It was just that Long Shui Yuan was a very qualified tool in her eyes. She was willing to use her own blood to predict the future of the Forgotten River Dragon clan. For the Dragon clan, she promised the old woman not to marry and to serve the clan for the rest of her life. Then what was she, Long Xiangyun? The old lady suddenly grabbed Long Xiangyun's arm and roared, as the next successor, you are the aunt of your brother's child. I hope that you won't be as ignorant as Long Chuyun. Back then, when I asked her to return the mermaid pearl, she told me that the mermaid pearl had already fused with her bloodline. She will die if we take it out rashly. A trace of disdain flashed across the old lady's eyes. She shouted sternly, so what if I die? If it was me? For the prosperity of the entire clan, even if I die, I will definitely hand over the mermaid pearl. What about her? She's just as selfish, ingrate. I gave her 2 options. Take the mermaid pearl and stay behind to become the saintess of the dragon clan. You will assist the next successor of the dragon clan, which is Jing. The other one is to bring the mermaid pearl to the marriage. But the future is unpredictable. Even if something happens in the future, I won't help her. Long Xiangyun shivered. It was as if she was meeting her grandmother for the first time. She just stared at her in a daze. For that ethereal future, you are going to treat your own child as a tool. Chapter 47:22. Sister Shui Yuan is obedient now. She promised you that she would never marry and protect the future of the Long family. But grandmother, you're going to die soon. Long Shangyun couldn't help but cry. Many years later, Sister Shui Yuan doesn't want to return the mermaid pearl and doesn't want to protect the family anymore. Are you going to crawl up from the ground and kill her? We are all your children. Every single one of us is an independent individual with our own thoughts and our own hearts. They are not marionettes that you can command at will and hit wherever you want them to. Rebellious daughter. Long Qian wanted to slap Long Shangyun's face. However, she felt a grip on her arm. Long Qian had grabbed her hand tightly. Long Qian pulled Long Shangyun and old madam and quickly retreated, avoiding a wave of heat that came from the bottom of the sea. Are all of you going against the heavens? Long Qian glared at Long Qian and Long Shangyun with her old eyes. The light in Long Huan's eyes dimmed bit by bit. He looked at her and said with disappointment, "Grandmother, I won't follow your arrangements and walk down the path you've arranged. I won't marry Duo Shanmei from the Duo family. You can give up." Rebellious. Long Qian was so angry that she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes were as white as ash. She knew that she didn't have much time left, but this group of juniors, one after another, didn't listen to her. The grand scheme that she had planned for the future of the Long family was going to be destroyed in the hands of these unfilial descendants. When she asked Long Chuyun to hand over the mermaid pearl, she refused. When she asked Long Qian to marry Duo Shanmei from the Duo family, she refused. When she asked Long Shangyun to support Long Qian's future children, she mocked her for being delusional. She even told her that everyone was an individual with their own thoughts and not a puppet in her hands. Even the most obedient Shui Yuan, could it be that after she woke up with the mermaid pearl, she would really stop listening to her like what Long Shangyun had said? She wanted to find someone who could support the family wholeheartedly, someone who could bring the family to greater heights. Why was it so difficult? Deep in the abyss of the sacrificial sea, a terrifying roar that sent chills down one's spine resounded. Everyone looked back and saw a giant snake tail rolling up from the depths of the abyss. It hooked onto a member of the dragon clan beside Prophet 2 and dragged him down with a splash. Everyone's pupils couldn't help but shrink. That dragon clan clansman was at least at the 15th level of the spirit realm, but he'd been dragged down so easily and without a sound. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist. This demonic sea beast, I'm afraid, mature saint beast. Long Qian suddenly burst out laughing. She stared at the nearby Qiao Mu, whose figure was separated by the rolling waves, and remarked coldly, "You are indeed a bit stronger than I imagined. But your life ends here." Arbor was too lazy to care about the old woman. She could see it now. This old woman was headstrong and self-opinionated. She had probably reached the peak. She thought that just because she drew the blueprint for the future of the dragon clan, everyone had to follow her arrangements and become tools for the clan to climb to the top. But was that possible? The future wouldn't be as she wished. Because the dragon clan of Wang Chuan had been destroyed by her. They had no future. The future of the dragon clan of Wang Chuan had been destroyed by this old woman. Chapter 47:23. Did Long Qian think that the demonic sea creature in the depths of the sacrificial sea would recognize her as its master? Wasn't she too naive and full of herself? Did she really think that the demonic sea creature would be able to differentiate between her enemies and her allies? Did she think that it would let the dragon clan off just to attack her in Arbor? Wrong. It was an indiscriminate attack. Just like right now, the giant tail in the undersea abyss struck out violently, and the boiling seawater was like a heat wave that covered everyone's faces. The streams of water turned into transparent arrows and pierced through the chests of the Dragon Clan clansmen, turning a dozen or so of them into beehives. The Dragon Clan's members were frozen on the spot, and in less than a second, they were torn apart and swept away by the waves of heat. Long Qian was shocked and didn't know how to react. That was until Long Shangyun suddenly shouted at her, "Grandmother, why your hand?" She finally regained her senses and looked down at her hand. She couldn't help but scream. It turned out that her hand had been silently melted by the boiling seawater. Long Qian only realized that something was wrong when Long Shangyun reminded her. The main reason was because there wasn't a single part of her body that wasn't in pain. The pain was so intense that she didn't even notice the change in her hand. Long Shangyun couldn't help but shiver as she looked at the boiling seawater. "Let's go up, brother." The seawater had already melted her grandmother's hand, and she wasn't sure if it would melt Long Shangyun's arms, legs, or even her head. This was too scary. Could it be that in the depths of the sacrificial sea, there weren't only icebergs that hadn't melted for thousands of years, but also volcanoes? Long Shangyun didn't want to stay in this strange place where fire and water mingled, yet they were still clearly separated. Ah! Quick! Defense! Defensive spiritual weapon. Defensive spiritual weapon. Quick! Cover me with a defensive spiritual weapon. Long Qian shouted. Hearing this, Long Shangyun's fingers trembled and she hurriedly put on a defensive spiritual artifact for her. Long Qian immediately felt much better. At least the burning sensation on her skin was slightly better. At this time, the seawater had already taken on an abnormal crimson color, like layers of heat waves. Circle after circle of shrinking encirclement, it wrapped in their direction. There was scalding hot seawater all around, and there were demonic sea beasts that attacked indiscriminately. Long Shangyun felt that such days were simply too difficult. She had to rush up to the surface of the sea as soon as possible. Otherwise, she was afraid that she would really die here. The more Long Shangyun let her imagination run wild, the more scared she felt. She then turned around and shouted anxiously in her brother's direction, "Brother, let's go." Long Qian was smarter than Long Xiang. His expression was still calm. "Don't panic, Xiang Yun. As long as you circulate a portion of your spiritual power around your body, you will be able to resist this hot seawater." The reason why his grandmother's palm was melted by the scalding seawater was because she seemed to have lost the ability to defend herself. Long Qian looked at Long Qian in surprise. Long Qian, on the other hand, was curled up in pain inside the shield. He stared at his half-burned hand and screamed in pain. His eyes were filled with anger. This Mu Qiao had gone insane and stripped her of the 9 layers of spirit water in the depths of her flesh and blood, as well as in her dantian. As a result, she was now a cripple. Her cultivation had deteriorated so much that she couldn't even activate the shield. Chapter 47-24. She was simply too unlucky. A trace of anger flashed across Long Qian's aged face. This little stoic was simply too abominable. She looked in the direction of Arbor. She couldn't help but be shocked by what she saw. At this time, Arbor was like a thin leaf swaying in the wind and rain. Her figure was almost transparent as she swayed on the spot. However, there was an extremely vigorous energy revolving around her body, as if it was about to burst out from her body. Long Qian's body trembled slightly as she was separated by the defensive barrier. However, in the blink of an eye, an ink-colored figure broke through the void like a fleeting shadow and abruptly appeared beside the little stoic. This person seemed to have torn open the void with his bare hands and emerged from it. He was so fast that Long Qian didn't detect a trace of the aura of a divine realm opening. She merely stared blankly at the young man who suddenly appeared and recognized him as the crown prince of the divine province at a glance. A trace of nervousness flashed through Long Qian's heart. Looking at how proficient this crown prince was when he tore open the void and emerged from it, it didn't seem like it was his first time doing this. Could it be this crown prince of the divine province also grasped the supreme power of the void? Our dear Qiao Mu, who was engaged in a tug-of-war with the Fuxi greatsword, was currently drenched in cold sweat and was somewhat hesitant. The soul-locking arrow was blocked by the thousands of defensive talismans she threw out in passing. However, these thousands of defensive talismans could only block it for about 15 minutes. At this moment, this soul-locking arrow was piercing through layer after layer of defensive barriers at a breakneck speed and was trying its best to attack Arbor. Prince Mo's sudden appearance caused the little stoic's hand that was trying to pull out the sword to stiffen slightly. She turned around to look at him in a daze. Did Jojo's lotus come out of seclusion? No, it didn't seem like it was a normal exit. Arbor panicked and her gaze roamed back and forth on his body. Just as she was about to speak, she felt her body lighten. He had already reached out and scooped her up, swiftly dodging a dozen water arrows that were shooting straight at her. When the transparent water fell into the sea, it created a series of splashes. It was full of energy. An angry roar came from the abyss. The giant snake's tail suddenly swept over like it had gone berserk, fiercely brushing past Qiao Mu and the others. Mo Lian glanced over expressionlessly. She wiped away the seawater in front of her with one hand, as if she was tearing a crack in the ocean. The countless waves created by the snake's tail were all sucked into the crack, not leaving a single bit behind. Long Huan's pupils shrank. He opened his mouth and muttered, "Is this the power of the void?" The power of the void could shatter the void and reverse the situation at any time. It made people unable to resist it at all. This man with cold phoenix eyes and stern features had grasped the power of the void. It was too unimaginable. Mo Lian lowered his head to glance at the little stoic. Although his handsome face was still expressionless, he actually said to her, "Don't be afraid." The little stoic, with Mo Lian's appearance, she really should use an image talisman to record it and play it for him to silently admire. It would definitely be very interesting. At this time, that soul-locking arrow finally broke through the layers of barriers and flew to Arbor. Unfortunately, before this fellow could stab into Arbor, the seawater in front of it parted slightly, revealing a black hole-like vortex that instantly sucked it in. "Be careful," the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal said hastily. "This soul-locking arrow ignores space." Chapter 47-25. Sure enough, as soon as the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal finished speaking, the soul-locking arrow jumped out of the black hole. The soul-locking arrow seemed to be drunk from the start. It shook its head and felt dizzy. After finally distinguishing the direction with great difficulty, he saw Qiao Mu as if she had seen a delicious snack and hastily dashed in her direction. Annoying. Mo Lian stared unhappily at the bouncing soul-locking arrow. Suddenly, she opened her inner world and took out a small bronze cauldron. Arbor's eyes lit up. Jojo's lotus was indeed ferocious. Looking at the situation, was she going to refine this annoying soul-locking arrow directly? The soul-locking arrow seemed to have sensed something. It turned around and scuttled. The tail of the arrow trembled slightly and burrowed into the black hole that Mo Lian had torn open. But very quickly, it came out from the other side of the black hole again. Very intelligently, it braked in the air. If it had a face, it would definitely make a scared shitless expression at this moment. There was nothing else. It had burrowed into the black hole and escaped again. It was getting closer and closer to that expressionless kid. Was he that scary? The soul-locking arrow retreated a little, but a huge suction force suddenly pulled it over. With a clang, the soul-locking arrow fell into the small bronze cauldron. This time, it was like a ferocious tiger entering a cage. Everyone could only hear the incessant clang 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 sounds. The soul-locking arrow struggled to get out of the small bronze cauldron. It knocked the cauldron's lid flying outwards. Mo Lien pressed her hand down and added a stream of holy power to seal the small bronze cauldron. She narrowed her eyes and raised her hand to throw in a stream of holy fire. Black flames suddenly sprang up from the bottom of the bronze cauldron. Instantly, the small cauldron was roasted to a faint red color. Arbor frowned as he looked at the inconspicuous small bronze cauldron in Mo Lien's hand. He suddenly thought of something and used his divine sense to enter the Tianji's secret realm. Ever since he came out of the Tianji's secret realm, he had been busy urging Jojo's Lotus to cultivate. Arbor did not have time to give the crafting cauldron to Lotus. At this moment, seeing him summon that small broken cauldron to refine the soul-locking arrow, Arbor finally remembered. After a quick search, he dug out the best crafting cauldron in the world, heaven and earth, from the vault guarded by the 100 or so mechanical men. The funny thing was, Charles sensed that she was taking away their treasures. At first, they stacked on top of each other and hung on the crafting cauldron, hugging it tightly without letting go. Then, because they couldn't snatch Jojo from him, they were thrown to the ground one by one, and they couldn't help but cry. That comical scene scared Arbor so much that he hurriedly locked them all in the small vault and closed the door. Out of sight, out of mind. Damn it, using a face that was similar to hers and crying non-stop, it really looked like a fantasy. Arbor took out the heaven and earth cauldron and stuffed it into Mo Lien's arms. Lien, use this to refine it. Everything that Mo Lien was doing right now was practically coming from his instincts. Strictly speaking, he was still in a state of half-cultivation and was not fully awake. But now, he was not completely unconscious. Seeing that Jojo gave him a palm-sized crafting cauldron that shone with a glazed luster, Mo Lien instinctively felt joy in his heart. Just as he made a contract with the heaven and earth cauldron, a thunderous roar came from the bottom of the ocean. Everyone's heart skipped a beat as a bad premonition floated in their hearts. For some reason, this unknown sense of danger was so strong. The sudden danger caused everyone's hearts to jump to their throats. Chapter 47-26. Mo Lien instinctively kept the cauldron of heaven and earth into her inner world and turned around to look at the depths of the sea. Under the layers of glaciers, a head slowly emerged from the whirlpool of silver-white ice crystals. Everyone was on tenterhooks as they broke out in cold sweat. They thought that this mature sacred beast would be a ferocious beast from the ancient times. With a bloody mouth and a body that was as tough as copper, it should be as tall as a small mountain. But they didn't expect that. What emerged from the whirlpool of ice crystals was actually a human head. The beast in front of them was just as they had imagined. Its upper body was still in the form of a human, and its face was almost as white as snow. Its eyes were slightly closed, and its eyebrows and lips were silver white in color. Arbor took a look and retracted his gaze. His gaze landed on the soul-locking arrow that was trapped inside the small bronze cauldron. Bang! In just a few seconds, the soul-locking arrow knocked away the ordinary weapon cauldron. Mo Lien frowned slightly. This ordinary cauldron that had been with him for a long time was destroyed by the soul-locking arrow just like that. He stretched out 2 fingers and grabbed the soul-locking arrow that was still trying to fly forward. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. On the other side, Long Qian subconsciously took a few steps back. When she touched Long Shangyun's arm, she quickly grabbed the ladder and whispered, "Let's go. Let's go up first. We'll talk after we get up." Long Qian wasn't stupid. She could already feel the heavy pressure that was coming from the demonic sea beast in human form. How strong was this pressure? Unknowingly, she was pressured to the point of suffocation. There were many juniors from the dragon clan in the sea, and none of them were a match for the demonic sea beast. The Wangchuan dragon clan still had to rely on these juniors to develop, so they couldn't all die here. Therefore, she was very anxious. She grabbed Long Shangyun's hand and whispered, "Let's go. We'll retreat first." Long Shangyun also felt the danger. After Long Qian grabbed her arm, she instinctively flung it away as if she was stung by a poisonous snake. Her instinctive reaction caused Long Qian's face to turn red from embarrassment. Her own granddaughter avoided her like a viper. This made her feel uncomfortable, and at the same time, anger rushed to her heart. The Wangchuan dragon clan was completely ungrateful. She really hoped that this demonic sea beast could hear her and devour all these ingrates. "Let's go." Long Qian came out of the hot sea and grabbed his sister Long Shangyun's arm. Long Qian instinctively grabbed onto Long Shangyun's other arm and refused to let go. "Shangyun, you know how grandmother used to treat you." She could only rely on the defensive barrier to resist the scalding seawater outside. If Xiangyun didn't continue to use her spiritual power to support the defensive barrier around her body, after losing the defensive barrier, she would definitely be scalded to the point where her skin would split open and her bones wouldn't even be left. Long Shangyun closed her eyes, turned around, and was about to pull her up with her. The terrified cries of the Dragon Clan's juniors could be heard all around. "Ah, why is the seawater so hot? Oh my god, it's too hot." When Long Qian saw the hundreds of juniors from the Dragon Clan, her eyes widened. She couldn't help but shout at them, "Why are you here?" Could it be that the battle above had ended? That shouldn't be the case. Chapter 47-27. Even if they had already won the battle above, these juniors shouldn't have rashly entered the sea to follow them. "Let's go, let's go. Clan leader, defensive walls have been erected all around here." "What's this?" This was the sacred beast confinement zone set up by the mature sacred beast in front of them. Long Qian couldn't help but shudder. He abruptly turned around and glared at Long Qian. "Grandmother, were you the one who awakened this mature sacred beast slumbering at the bottom of the sacrificial sea?" How could Long Qian admit it at a time like this? How would she dare to admit such a thing? Even if she was the one who summoned it, she didn't dare to admit it. Besides, she had no confidence at all. Previously, she wanted to summon a powerful demonic sea beast to force the little stoic to hand over the shark pearl. But now things had clearly spiraled out of her control. Even she felt powerless to reverse the situation. "Stop wasting time. Let's go." Long Qian roared anxiously at Long Qian. She turned around and saw that the half-human sacred beast had already crawled out of the ice crystal abyss. Yes, half-human. The lower half of this sacred beast's body was coiled with a giant snake tail. Long Qian guessed that if it expanded its body, it would probably be 100 meters long. It was obvious that Long Qian had underestimated the strength of this sacred beast's snake tail. It suddenly uncoiled its snake tail. Even though it was only half uncoiled, it still crushed dozens of Dragon Clan youths. Those youths from the forgetful Chuan Dragon Clan who had just entered the sea and hadn't recovered from the heat of the sea, were instantly sent flying by that giant snake tail and crashed onto the ground. They didn't even have a chance to cry out before their bones and muscles were pulverized, and they all went to the Yellow Springs. Long Qian. Run! Run! Before Long Qian could finish her hysterical screams, the humanoid holy beast opened its eyes dangerously. His eyes were almost transparent, and they flickered with a dangerous, bloodthirsty glint. Xiao Mu obediently played the role of a little quail, hiding in Mo Lian's embrace as she furtively peeked at that crazed humanoid sacred beast. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hurriedly whispered to Arbor, "No matter what happens later, remember not to escape into the galaxy. Cover it properly and don't open it." Arbor's pupils shrank slightly. She immediately understood what the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal meant. This meant that in front of this mature holy beast, any space was useless. Escaping into the star field would only speed up his own death. That was because he was able to ignore the laws of space. If he were to follow Zhang Xian in, the consequences would be dire. Based on how bloodthirsty and merciless this saint beast was, it was likely that all the creatures in the star field would be wiped clean. Including Arbor, the master of the star system. At the thought of this, Arbor couldn't help but shiver. He then looked at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and said, "Let's escape together." These words were spoken very decisively. Running away was probably the best option at the moment. He ran far away and didn't want to confront him head-on. Who asked him to be ruthless? Who asked him to be so pretentious? Who asked him to fly? They didn't want to play with him anymore. Running away was the right thing to do. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at the little fellow's sparkling eyes. If it wasn't for the critical situation at the moment, he would have burst out laughing. Why did this fellow make it sound so natural to admit defeat and run away? I'm afraid it's too late to run away. This sacred beast looks like it has gone berserk. Once he dealt with those dragon clan members who were like little worms, what would happen next? Chapter 47-28. Then, they would become targets. The humanoid sacred beast would focus on them. Now that he had erected the sacred beast realm everywhere, how could the people inside escape? "Jojo, don't let the little white snake and the others out," Ma Yi-chen whispered to her. If this mature sacred beast saw the little white snake and the others, it would happily devour them. Arbor nodded, secretly breaking out in cold sweat. Luckily, Ma Yi-chen and the others were still thousands of miles above the sea. Now that this place was blocked by the sacred beast realm, it naturally wouldn't be able to sense them. As for the little white snake, she had already kept it in her galaxy. Otherwise, if they were targeted by this humanoid sacred beast, Arbor's heart shuddered, secretly rejoicing. At this time, Long Qian felt that her heart was about to stop. She watched as the young people of her clan were killed by the humanoid sacred beast like vegetables. With a sweep of his hand, they were turned into a pile of minced meat. Long Qian couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. "Don't kill them, don't kill them." This humanoid demonic beast was killing the future of the dragon clan. How could this be? How could this be? Shouldn't the demonic sea beasts of the Forgotten River Dragon clan be their sacred beast guardian? Why would he attack indiscriminately? Look at his cold eyes, he couldn't see anyone at all. It was as if everyone in front of him was a small insect that had invaded his territory. Only by crushing them one by one would he be able to continue sleeping peacefully. It shouldn't be like this. Long Qian looked at the scene in front of her with tears streaming down her face. She felt as if a sharp knife was gouging the flesh from her heart. These young people who could create the future of the Forgotten River Dragon clan. But they were all killed by a sacred beast. He watched as the Dragon clan's people were swept up into the air by the demonic sea beast's tail like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves before turning into a pile of dust that fell to the ground. Long Qian's body fell backward and landed heavily on the ground. There was no hope. There was no hope. To think that the future of the Dragon clan would be written in such a hilarious way. The youths of the Forgotten River Dragon clan had all died in this comical battle. What future did they have left to write? The funniest thing was that this humanoid holy beast was the trump card that the Forgetful River Dragon clan's clan leader had personally summoned. It was a trump card that he intended to use against his own granddaughter. However, even Long Qian herself was baffled by the sudden turn of events. When the last member of the dragon clan who was desperately trying to escape to the surface of the sea was smashed into meat paste by the huge tail of the humanoid saint beast, Long Xiangyun lowered her head to take a look and couldn't help but jump in fright. Long Qian's eyes were wide open as if he had just seen something unbelievable. His entire body was stiff and his face was stiff. "Grandmother!" Long Xiangyun cried out in a mournful voice, trembling as she reached out to feel for her grandmother's breath. "Ah!" Long Xiangyun's body fell backwards into the scalding seawater. Long Qian rushed over with a calm expression. He reached out to feel the old lady's breath before turning around and nodding at Long Xiangyun. "Grandmother, she's gone." Long Xiangyun shuddered as she looked at Long Qian's furious face. She couldn't help but mumble, "Brother, grandmother must have been angered to death." This was the biggest joke in the world. The forgetful River Dragon clan's clan leader was angered to death. Chapter 47-29. Long Qian's heart ached when she saw this. Unable to withstand such a huge blow, she fell backward and fell into the boiling water with her shield. His whole body sizzled as it was being burned by the boiling hot sea water. "Grandmother!" Long Qian quickly rushed over with a calm expression. He raised his hand and touched the old lady's nose. Then, he turned around and looked at his sister with a strange expression. "Grandmother, she's not breathing." Long Xiangyun shivered and lowered her head to look at Long Qian. Her eyes were wide open, and she looked like she had died with a grievance. It was a terrifying sight. Long Xiangyun subconsciously reached out and grabbed her brother's hand. She couldn't help but mumble, brother, grandmother, could it be that she died from anger?" This was the biggest joke in the world. The dignified leader of the Wang Chuan dragon clan was angered to death by a mature sacred beast. Who would believe it if he told them about it? Long Qian shook his head. She was severely injured before this. In other words, the leader of the dragon clan probably knew that he didn't have long to live. Because he was severely injured before, and seeing the juniors of the Wang Chuan dragon clan being massacred, he couldn't do anything about it. He was so angry that he couldn't recover. She left so suddenly. Long Qian and his sister looked at each other, not knowing what to think. Their grandmother, who had always been decisive, had passed away in such a strange way. Although she had stopped breathing, their grandmother was now a transcendent realm cultivator. Her divine sense could probably suddenly. Long Huan's gaze changed slightly. He quickly pulled Long Xiangyun, who was beside him, and quickly retreated. Long Xiangyun suddenly hugged her head and cried out in alarm. Her body trembled uncontrollably as she shivered. "Xiangyun, Xiangyun." Long Qian stared at Long Xiangyun angrily. As he reached out to support her, he couldn't help but shout angrily, "Grandmother! Your divine sense quickly retreat from Xiangyun's body. She can't withstand your transcendent realm divine sense. She will." Long Xiangyun's body stiffly fell backwards. At the same time, the mature sacred beast that had swept through the entire forgotten River Dragon clan slowly turned its cold and indifferent glassy eyes in their direction. Just like that, he stared coldly at Long Xiangyun across the churning magma-like seawater. Long Huan's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Suddenly, they saw the humanoid super holy beast stretching out its huge snake tail and sweeping it towards them. Long Shi didn't have time to think. He quickly grabbed Long Xiangyun's body and retreated. At the same time, clusters of black flames suddenly ignited in Mo Lian's hand, firmly locking the soul-locking arrow that was trying to escape in a panic in her palm. With the burning of the holy fire, the soul-locking arrow became a little more obedient. It lay on Mo Lian's palm and stopped courting death. Probably because it realized that the man in front of it was a terrifying guy who could refine itself, the soul-locking arrow obediently stayed in his palm and pretended to be dead. After Mo Lien finished burning the soul-locking arrow, he suddenly flicked his hand. A stream of light flew out. The soul-locking arrow flew towards the humanoid holy beast at lightning speed. The arrow pierced towards the beast's thick snake tail. 40480 had some small changes. It was mainly to increase the old lady's mental activity. It didn't matter if she saw it or not. Chapter 4730. Even Arbor could not help but look at the death-courting arrow in a different light. Not only did this thing only know how to bully the weak, Joe, it even dared to confront a super sacred beast. In the blink of an eye, the humanoid sacred beast suddenly turned its head. A pair of cold glassy eyes stared fixedly at the soul-locking arrow. The soul-locking arrow made a 360-degree turn in the air and swiftly flew towards Mo Lien with a whoosh. Arbor was speechless. She took back her previous compliments. A coward was a coward. Persimmons were soft persimmons. The soul-locking arrow flew to Mo Lien's side and pretended to be dead. Arbor looked at it with disdain. To think that you are a sacred weapon. Who would have thought that you were such a big coward? Spiritual weapons had spirits. Furthermore, this was a sacred weapon. This thing had already been enlightened and understood human nature. Arbor's glance seemed insignificant, but it contained a great deal of mockery. The soul-locking arrow jumped twice in the air. It wanted to charge down and continue to aim at Arbor. However, upon seeing Mo Lien's pitch-black eyes coldly sweep over, the soul-locking arrow immediately became docile. The humanoid sacred beast was stopped by the soul-locking arrow. Its attention was focused on Mo Lien and He Jichin. Long Huan, who had escaped death, was covered in cold sweat. He suddenly turned and grabbed Long Shangyun's hand. He lowered his voice and growled, "Come out." Long Shangyun flung Long Huan's hand away. She pursed her lips. When she raised her head again, her eyes were filled with vicissitudes and coldness. "Do you know the past of the Forgotten River Dragon clan?" Long Shangyun stared coldly at Long Huan. She said word by word, "The overlord of the Forgotten River for 100 years. Half of the country was under his control. During the most prosperous period, even the emperors of the 3 continents had to bow and respectfully greet the Forgotten River Dragon clan's patriarch as Senior Long. Our clan once had the world's strongest guardian beast. The sacred beast Black Dragon." The cold sweat on Long Huan's forehead rolled down one by one. He really wanted to kneel down and beg this grandmother to stop causing trouble. Come out of his sister's body. At this moment, Long Shangyun's body was barely able to support Long Qian's spiritual soul. As time passed, she would definitely collapse. Long Huan, you should have guessed it. If this guardian beast did not go berserk for some reason, the Dragon clan's ancestors would not plan to get rid of it. Scatter its spirit and seal it in the Black Soul Pearl. For this reason, our tribe has been secretly researching the reason why the Black Dragon went berserk. Long Huan's of the Black Dragon clan's eyes. Long Huan clenched his fists, his voice trembling. Grandmother, can you stop talking? Come out of Xiang Yun's body first. Long Shangyun's body was already cracking, and wisps of blood were seeping out from her skin. Long Shangyun raised her head. It was as if her head had been pulled up from the back of her head by a hook. Her head was twisted at an angle. We call these berserk holy beasts that don't even recognize their own kin exterminators. Because when they went berserk, they could destroy everything in the world. At this point, Long Shangyun suddenly laughed wildly with a twisted expression. Her sharp voice was mixed with a trace of age. Since we can't go back to the past, then let the others be destroyed with our Forgotten River Dragon clan. Chapter 4731. Long Xiangyun's expression was very apathetic as she reached out and took a space ring from Long Qian's corpse. Grandmother! Long Qian shouted in horror. However, Long Xiangyun quickly took out several bottles of clear blue medicinal liquid and threw them into the sea. The surroundings immediately emitted a strange fragrance, and the entire underwater abyss was enveloped by this smell. A berserk factor surged in the humanoid's sacred beast's eyes. It was accompanied by Long Xiangyun's half-shrill, half-aged voice. Although we haven't been able to develop a method to break this berserk state. However, we have extracted an item from the sacred beast Black Dragon's body that can make a berserk medicinal liquid. In the eyes of an exterminator, everything in the world must be destroyed without exception. Long Xiangyun laughed maniacally until blood seeped out of her facial orifices. She looked especially terrifying as blood trickled down her face. The humanoid sacred beast's body suddenly doubled in size. The entire azure sea was pressed down on the top of its head, and the eerily cold underwater abyss was coiled up beneath its body. It bared a mouthful of fangs and lowered its head to whip its tail without any explanation, striking at the place where Mo Lian and Ji Qin were standing. Mo Lian reflexively flung the little stoic outside. The Raven Moon's sword was already in her hand, and she swiftly drew a stream of black flames to meet that huge tail head-on. The black flames landed on the humanoid sacred beast's huge tail, but they were swiftly repelled. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's divine sword scraped against the snake's hard scales, and he felt the web between his thumb and index finger go slightly numb from the shock. When he withdrew his sword to take a look, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. A divine weapon was completely rolled up from the sword tip to the blade. It was clear how sturdy that fellow's scales were. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's face was cold as he casually tossed that divine weapon out. With the point of his finger, the divine weapon exploded with a boom. The unrestrained flow of water slapped in all directions. A divine weapon's explosion at such a close distance didn't injure that humanoid sacred beast in the slightest. This sacred beast merely glanced at Ji Qin indifferently before swiftly swimming toward him. Rotten peach blossom. Arbor's heart raced at this moment, and her gaze was somewhat dazed. She felt her heart beating so fast that it was about to jump out of her chest. The humanoid holy beast was too fast, so fast that she didn't even have time to react. The sacred beast's huge body was like a huge black screen, suppressing the light in front of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. Mo Lian's movements were also very fast. Seeing that the situation was not right, he almost instinctively threw out a hidden weapon that he carried with him. With a slight movement of his fingertips, more than 10 expressionless golems were summoned from his space ring. They surged forward to besiege the humanoid holy beast. At the same time, he appeared beside the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and pulled him away from the human-shaped divine beast. The huge tail of the humanoid holy beast fell down and slammed into the sea. The sweeping force caused the two of them to stumble forward. All of a sudden, a whirlpool appeared in the depths of the ocean. A terrifying suction force instantly wrapped around a section of the humanoid holy beast's tail. Mo Lian and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked back at the same time. Without needing to greet each other, they simultaneously launched a swift and powerful attack toward the head of the humanoid holy beast. Black flames mixed with greenwood spiritual energy were wrapped in two streams of sacred power. They ruthlessly slammed into the head of the humanoid holy beast. Bam! A bloody bump appeared on the forehead of the holy beast from the explosive force. Chapter 4732 40484 Fushi Great Sword. Mo Lian and Yuan Shiqin did not need to communicate at all. Even if Mo Lian was still in a state of half-cultivation, He also knew the principle of taking advantage of a person's weakness to take his life, seeing that the humanoid divine beast's tail was entangled by a mysterious force in the abyss. How could they not take advantage of this opportunity to kill him? The two of them released their saint powers and smashed it all on the head of the unlucky humanoid divine beast as if it was free of charge. The group of mechanical men summoned by Mo Lien were even more impressive. They did not care about their lives at all and pounced forward one after another. The swords, spears, swords and halberds in their hands were all aimed at the upper body of the humanoid divine beast. The lower body of the humanoid divine beast was like an iron bastion. If they were to attack, it would be best to aim at his upper body. Now that this fellow was entangled by the force in the abyss, it was a good opportunity for everyone to torture him. A series of attacks were aimed at this fellow's face. This humanoid divine beast was so enraged that he roared continuously. His cold-glazed eyes stared straight in the direction of Mo Lien and Yuan Shiqin with an expression of hatred. Even if you hit someone, you would not hit their face, not to mention that he was a senior at the level of a mature divine beast. This bunch of little bastards, they really did not want to live anymore. They actually dared to attack this senior's face. Arbor had been secretly hiding at the side. When she saw this, a section of the Fushi great sword suddenly appeared in her left hand and quickly pulled it out. The moment she pulled it out, the little fellow's body shook violently a few times. Mo Lien felt something and turned around to take a look. Instantly, she saw that the little fellow's body was white and seemed to be swaying, as if his soul was about to leave his body. Suddenly, he felt his heart stop for a moment. He hurriedly shouted, "Don't move." To be honest, Arbor did not even notice what Mo Lien was shouting at her. At this moment, all her senses were focused on the Fushi great sword in her hand. She could feel an extremely strong force, flowing endlessly into her body. The feeling of becoming one with the sword was wonderful. However, Arbor looked up at the sea with a guilty expression. For some inexplicable reason, the surrounding air seemed to have become a few degrees colder. She didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but she kept feeling that ever since she pulled out the Fushi greatsword, she seemed to be able to sense the aura of the heavenly Tao, which suddenly enveloped her. "Heavenly Tao, do you dare to come? Come and I'll curse you to death. You don't care about so many people who were smuggled in from the sanctuary. Even if you care about the heavens and earth, you can't care about Jojo drawing the Fushi greatsword." Arbor held the Fushi greatsword in his hand and turned his head to look at the human-shaped sacred beast that was entangled in the abyss. "If I don't kill you now, when will I?" Arbor carried her greatsword and rushed towards the undersea abyss. That image made one's mouth twitch uncontrollably at a critical moment. "Get out of the way." Arbor waved his little hand at Mo Lien and Yuan Shiqin. His entire body was filled with the power of the Fushi greatsword. She couldn't control it. Lord Jojo raised the Fushi greatsword in his hand high up and slashed down at the human-shaped sacred beast's head in the undersea abyss. The human-shaped sacred beast's pupils constricted silently, and he hurriedly waved his hand to set up a realm. Arbor's Fushi greatsword fell. The speed was almost shocking. At this time, there was no such thing as swordsmanship. Arbor just followed her heart and casually slashed with this sword. It was this sword that struck the sacred beast realm with a loud bang. With just one slash, thousands of spiderweb-like cracks appeared in the realm. Chapter 47-33. A hint of disbelief flashed through the humanoid sacred beast's glassy eyes. It wasn't the only one who was shocked. Mo Lien and Hechen were stunned as well. Their gazes landed on the Fushi sword in the little fellow's hand. What a powerful sacred weapon. At this moment, the sword was covered in a layer of intense white light. They could only vaguely see the dense sacred chi flowing on it. Even Xiao Mu herself was taken aback by this attack. She didn't expect the Fuxi Greatsword to be able to break through the realm of the humanoid sacred beast with a single slash. The spiderweb-like crack suddenly appeared. Seeing that the humanoid sacred beast's head was about to be pierced, it hurriedly swung its long tail and wrapped itself in it. The power of the sword landed squarely on its tail, scraping its scales and slicing off a piece of flesh from its tail. Everyone felt the pain for the humanoid sacred beast even though they were separated by the boiling water. Arbor's sword cut through the sea and pointed at the sacred beast. Its power was so great that it made everyone's jaws drop. Long Qian, who was in Long Shangyun's body, couldn't help but stare blankly. She muttered to herself, "No, it's impossible. How was this possible? What kind of sword in the world could slash a saint beast and peel off the scales of a saint beast? This world was truly a fantasy. When did this little girl become so capable?" Long Qian took a deep breath. She couldn't help but clench her fists. This lass's secrets were truly endless. It was as if she had countless trump cards that she would never use at once. She was so young, but she was so scheming. She wasn't easy to deal with. But so what if this sacred weapon was powerful? In the hands of a little deity realm cultivator, no matter how useful it was still very limited. A cold light flashed through Long Qian's eyes. Don't waste your energy struggling. No one can escape from the palm of the berserk sacred beast. Long Qian's face was filled with excitement as she said that. It was an honor for these people to be able to accompany her, the leader of the dragon clan, to die near the Lethe abyss. The humanoid saint beast suddenly let out a furious roar. His glassy eyes suddenly turned into a pair of vertical pupils as he stared coldly at Arbor. The giant tail beneath him suddenly turned into hundreds of afterimages and wrapped around Arbor. Arbor only felt a cold and gloomy aura rushing towards him, and subconsciously wanted to dodge this attack. However, the holy beast was too fast, and Arbor was locked on by his aura, so he couldn't use the power of space to teleport. In a moment of desperation, she subconsciously raised her Fuxi Greatsword to block the attack. Mo Lian and Hichin only felt that this little lady was too audacious. Their hearts were in their throats, and they threw themselves at the little stoic without any explanation. With a loud rumble, the entire seabed abyss collapsed. Subsequently, Xiao Mu's figure flew out and tumbled several times in the seawater before stabilizing herself with great difficulty. Sir Jojo wiped his face with his small hand and blinked. He waved his hand at Mo Lian, who rushed over in a panic, indicating that he was fine. Everyone could see with their naked eyes that the entrance to the endless ice cave in the sacrificial sea abyss and the cross-section of the glacier were shattering inch by inch in this earth-shattering quake. The scene in front of them was like a galaxy shattering. The boiling seawater was enveloped by the icy aura emitted from the seabed abyss. Chapter 47-34. The seawater finally started to cool. But very quickly, everyone present felt that something was amiss. The temperature of the seawater was dropping too quickly. In less than a second, everyone felt that the surrounding seawater had frozen into an ice hole. Waves of cold air seeped into their limbs and bones, causing them to shiver uncontrollably. "Jojo!" Hu Shichen shouted. The humanoid divine beast's roar suddenly drowned out his shout. A pair of vertical glazed eyes were filled with coldness. If it was said that he was a powerful divine beast with some consciousness just now, then he was now a Terminator who had no consciousness at all and only knew how to kill. "I will hold him back. You take Jojo and leave first." Hu Shichen pushed Mo Lian hard, but the latter did not budge. "What are you waiting for? Let's go. If you die, Jojo will be sad." "Nonsense. How can someone with my level of cultivation die?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal suddenly turned to look at Mo Lien. You have recovered. This guy's tone just now sounded very conscious. Probably. Mo Lien nodded slightly. Later I will use the ancient Mo Lien's real body to deal with him. You will assist me. What's the price? Hu Shichen raised his brows and asked. He did not believe that there would be no price to pay for activating the ancient Mo Lien's real body. Mo Lien was silent for a moment, then said, I will probably be in deep sleep for a while. Hu Shichen rolled his eyes at him. That won't do. Jojo will cry if you do that. Don't think that he did not know. This guy had sensed Jojo's danger and forcefully removed himself from the state of cultivation. Now that he had gotten rid of his unconscious state, he must have used some secret technique from the ancient inheritance. Correspondingly, the price he had to pay would naturally not be small. By then, if he fell into deep sleep, Jojo would be in tears. No, 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 absolutely not. Ma Yingchen waved at him and said, all right, cut the crap and stick to the original plan. I'll hold this guy back while you take Jojo and the others away from here. The further away, the better. Looking at the current state of this human snake, it should be impossible for him to leave the Forgotten River domain. In short, as long as Jojo and the rest got out of Forget River, they would be safe. Mo Lien remained silent, but she had made up her mind to activate the ancient Mo Lien to temporarily deal with this mature sacred beast in front of her. Once he activated the ancient Mo Lien, he would be completely immersed in the main body of the plant, and it would be difficult for him to extricate himself from it for a short period of time. Ancient Mo Lien's seal wouldn't harm him in any way. On the contrary, cultivating in a deep sleep was actually very beneficial to him. But if that happened, Jojo would still be sad. Seeing that he was hesitating, Yuan Shichen didn't waste any more words with him. She directly jumped in front of the human snake. Staring at the other party's vertical pupils, she said coldly, you little worm that lives in a bottomless pit, you're quite fierce. Do you understand what I'm saying? I wonder how old you are. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal raised his eyebrows and laughed coldly. Your opponent is me. Arbor kicked in the water and slid towards the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal at an incredible speed. Halfway there, she was stopped by Mo Lien. Stay here obediently and keep your sword. Mo Lien gazed at her ghastly pale small face and reached out to touch her ice-cold cheek. Hurry. Arbor was stunned. She was about to ask if he had regained his consciousness when she saw that Yuan Shichen was in danger. Chapter 47-35. The berserk sacred beast let out a roar, exuding a boundless chill. Narrowing its eyes, a layer of icy mist appeared around it. With a wave of its hand, it crushed the snowflakes into thousands of pearl-shaped snowflakes that lined up in the air. It flung the snowflakes in the direction of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. The cold air that tore through the air rushed toward the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. If he was hit, even if he didn't die, he would be half dead. His body would be turned into a hornet's nest by the snowflakes. It would be a spectacular sight. In the blink of an eye, Mo Lien released Xiao Mu and swiftly planted a kiss on her temple. He said softly, stay here and don't move. Jojo, remember that no matter what happens to me, I will always be worried about you. No matter how difficult the future is, I will find a way to return to your side. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. She had a feeling that Mo Lien was implying something. She wanted to ask more. Mo Lien had already torn open space and moved to the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's side. When Zhiqin saw Mo Lien running over, he couldn't help but panic. Why did you roll over here? Get lost. Get lost. Mo Lien didn't even bother to look at him. She said in a low voice, "I said that if you die, Jojo will be sad." "How can I, ha?" Mo Lien didn't bother to talk nonsense with him. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the berserk human snake. Suddenly, she raised a defensive wall around them. With a cold glint in her eyes, she stared at him and said, "Get back to the seabed abyss." Chiao Moot sprinted madly, wanting to dash over but was blocked outside the defensive wall. "What are you doing?" Arbor panicked. She had a strange feeling that something bad was about to happen. This humanoid sacred beast was indeed very strong, but it wasn't invincible. She planned to explode the mystic realm if she couldn't defeat it. What was Mo Lien trying to do? Amidst the chaos in Arbor, an ink-colored lotus rose from the ground and grew to the height of dozens of meters in a split second. At this time, even through the defensive wall, they could clearly see that Mo Lien's complexion had turned a bit pale. "Lien!" Chiao Moot shouted harshly. She was almost scared to death by him. Even if he wanted to use ancient Mo Lien's special technique to deal with the sacred beast in front of him, there was no need to keep her outside the defensive barrier, right? Unless there would definitely be repercussions if he dealt with it this way. Arbor's mind raced. Suddenly, he realized that Mo Lien might have forced herself out of seclusion. There was a high possibility of this happening. Therefore, if he hastily used the ancient Mo Lien, it would probably affect his body to a certain extent. What kind of impact would it have? Arbor was so anxious that her eyes turned red. She rushed over and slapped the defensive barrier. "Open it. Mo Lien, listen to me." Arbor was both anxious and angry. "If you don't open it, I'll ignore you for the rest of my life." It was like this every time. Every time something happened, she would try to keep Jojo outside and deal with it herself. Jojo wasn't just for show. Jojo could fight alongside her. She wasn't afraid of danger. She was only afraid of Mo Lien. When things came to a head, she always liked to hide things from her and take on everything herself. "Open it." Ji Chen was also very anxious. However, at this time, the ancient ink lotus had already completely opened its huge corolla. Suddenly, the entire flower was lit up with black flames. The flames spread outward as if they were going to swallow everything in the world. Chapter 47-36. This power was extremely strong. The humanoid sacred beast didn't know if the others felt the same way. Anyway, he had entered an illusion at this moment. Under the endless sea of ink-colored lotus flowers, a tall figure stood in the air above the sea of flowers, staring at him coldly. This was the ancient Mo Lien's bounded domain. Although the humanoid sacred beast was in a frenzied state at this time, his mind was still somewhat clear. Seeing such a vast and boundless bounded domain, he was shocked and his heart couldn't help but tremble. This bounded domain was too vast and boundless. He didn't know if this person could mobilize all the forces in the bounded domain. Thinking of this, the humanoid snake saw the sea of flowers in front of him churning and rippling. One after another, ink-colored lotuses soared into the air, mixing together in clusters and sticking closely to each other. Petals fell and fluttered in the air. But in front of him was pure darkness. The ink-colored lotus petals covered the sky and the earth, causing the humanoid snake's vertical pupils to reflect this ink-black color. This kind of black color was too pure. Arbor stood outside the defensive wall, only seeing Mo Lien, Hu Shichen, and the humanoid snake, suspended in the air in a triangular tripod. Hu Shichen was anxiously shouting something at Mo Lien. The other two were facing each other, not moving at all. This soon, the huge ink-colored lotus flower beside Mo Lien emitted a black luster, covering the humanoid snake. The humanoid snake also emitted a light wheel, protecting himself like a protective circle. Arbor's eyes widened. She was outside the defensive wall, so she didn't know what was happening inside. What she saw was the scene of Mo Lien and the humanoid snake confronting each other, but she didn't know that the two of them had already entered the divine sense realm. They had already broken away from the battle of the physical body and entered the battle of the divine sense. The humanoid snake's divine sense was locked in the bounded domain by Mo Lien and couldn't come out for the time being. Now, the two of them were just empty shells, both of them in the outer world. At this moment, other than He Qin, who was able to tell that something was amiss, even Long Qian, who had sharp eyes, was shocked and didn't say anything. She didn't see how the rapid change in the situation before her eyes had developed. She also didn't know that Mo Lien and the Snake Man had engaged in a battle of spiritual awareness. Meanwhile, a familiar exasperated roar came from the sky. Xian Huang, what are you doing? Dark Phoenix. Why are you here again? You and Defy the Sky are trying to defy the heavens. If Heavenly Tao had a face right now, it would definitely be an expression of exasperation. I'm telling you, you can't do this. With your strength, if you recklessly interfere in the matters of this place, this region will collapse. It collapsed. Scram. How can you be so rude? The Heavenly Tao was so angry that it was hopping around. Hundreds and thousands of heavenly locks firmly restrained Xian Huang's limbs. With an uncompromising look, it said sternly, "No. I can't let you go. I'll bet my head with you. That brat of yours will definitely be fine. She's definitely alive and well. Right now, this child's soul is just a little unstable. Why are you so anxious?" Scram. The Heavenly Tao was furious. Other than scram, can't you add a few more words? Get the fuck out of here. The Heavenly Tao was speechless. How could Xian Huang be such a person? Was it going to compromise or not? If it didn't let Xian Huang go, would those people from Xian Huang's family come to cause trouble? Wouldn't that be even more troublesome? Chapter 47-37. Why not? Looking at the furious Xian Huang in front of him, Tian Dao felt very stifled. Xian Huang and Against the Sky always took turns to cause trouble here. What should he do now? Heavenly Tao, you old geezer, are you up to something in secret? Those 13 old things on the sea don't look like people from here. Why can they come here but I can't? Because you're much more powerful than all of them combined. Tian Dao muttered in his heart. But he would never say this in front of Xian Huang, lest Xian Huang become even more cocky. Tian Dao's current thoughts were probably, it's too difficult for me. There would always be a few variables in a continent that was originally developing normally. Can't you just develop properly? You like to have a few little evildoers and perverts every day. Just looking at you makes one feel stifled. Against the Sky, Tian Dao suddenly transformed into a half-grown child and pounced on Xian Huang like a tiger. Its meaty hands firmly pressed down on this person's mouth. Stop shouting, stop shouting. Xian Huang looked into Tian Dao's bulging eyes at a close distance. She inexplicably had the urge to burst into laughter. This fellow looked too comical and ridiculous. Don't think that you can change the nature of your old bones just because you've turned into a cute baby. Xian Huang scolded expressionlessly. Tian Dao's face was bitter as he stammered, "Don't alarm Against the Sky again. He came not long ago and can't come again. I'm telling you." All right, you go back first. Leave the matters here to this old man, okay? No. Xian Huang cried out agitatedly. Her saliva almost sprayed on the old man's face. Tian Dao's old face twisted in anger. Then, he said with a fierce face, "I'm telling you, Xian Huang, don't force me to use my trump card. You can't bear the consequences. Xian Huang stared at the fellow in front of her with disdain. There was still some doubt in her eyes. What trump card? According to her understanding, Tian Dao was a coward who bullied the weak and feared the strong. It wasn't that she was looking down on this fellow, but what trump card could it have that could threaten her? Heavenly Dao, who was close at hand, suddenly let out an earth-shattering cry. Xian Huang, he pounced on her and hugged her arm. He wailed, "If you don't go back, I'll go to your house every day and cry until you die." Xian Huang, with a wave of his hand, he was unable to shake off the heavenly Dao. Xian Huang suddenly felt helpless. "What do you want?" "Go back." "No." Xian Huang angrily slapped the back of his head. "Didn't you see that my Xiao Bao has taken out the Fuxi sword? Her soul is so unstable, and there are still 2 fragments of her soul that have yet to be retrieved," Xian Huang said with a cold face. "I have to see with my own eyes that everything is settled and that she is fine." Yes, I understand." Tian Dao wiped his tears and said solemnly, "Xian Huang, go back first. Leave this to me. Don't worry, I won't let any of those old fellows who trespassed into the sacred region off." "You?" Xian Huang glanced at him suspiciously, indicating that she was somewhat doubtful of his words. Tian Dao was very soft-hearted. Would he really deal with those outsiders? "Hey, don't doubt me." Tian Dao noticed the suspicion in her eyes and couldn't help but feel anxious. "Let me tell you, I'm really not that unreliable." Chapter 4738. That human-shaped sacred beast was originally left behind from the ancient times, so it can't be considered as an intruder. Tian Dao solemnly swore. Although he's unusually fierce, he was actually just woken up by someone. He's also very innocent, isn't he? Xian Huang, just like you, if you're suddenly woken up from a good sleep, you'll also have a temper when you wake up, right? Xian Huang, fuck, I'll be a fool if I believe you. This temper when you wake up almost killed my disciple and his group. Hey, we really can't interfere with this sacred beast. He's also very innocent, right? Tian Dao wiped his old tears and acted cute as he discussed with Xian Huang. He was originally sleeping in the abyss of the sea. I'm afraid he might not wake up even after 1,000 years. However, someone with ulterior motives woke him up and even sprinkled a berserk medicinal liquid on him. If he wakes up now, the first person he'll kill will definitely be the person who woke him up and sprinkled the medicinal liquid on him. You talk so much nonsense, what exactly do you want to say? Xian Huang angrily kicked Tian Dao. Tian Dao, I'm suffering in my heart. Hey, I want to say. Those cultivators who came from the holy region, I can help your disciple to deal with them. But Tian Dao's words took a turn. You also promised me that you won't interfere with that sacred beast. That sacred beast is also very innocent. So I have to fucking watch that human snake kill my disciple and his group. You have to believe in destiny. Tian Dao raised his finger and pointed to the sky. How can your disciple be killed by a sacred beast? What kind of person is your disciple? You know, I know, and even the heavens and earth know. Hey, little girls need to go through some training before they can blossom and bear fruit, right? Scram! Xian Huang angrily punched Tian Dao's eye. Tian Dao's eye instantly swelled up. Fortunately, he was a formless, colorless, and shapeless person. He reached out to wipe his eye and returned to his original appearance. You can't be so crude and violent. Tian Dao was extremely angry. He extended his fist and heavily knocked on Xian Huang's head twice. This old man is discussing with you right now. Discussion. Don't fucking refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Xian Huang! I'll drink as punishment, I'll drink as punishment, fucking drink as punishment. Just as Tiandao's voice fell, Xian Huang transformed into a terrifying Tyrannosaurus. She lifted Tiandao and threw him left and right, punching and kicking him. Old bastard, quickly remove the heavenly lock on my body. Otherwise, I'll tear your sky apart. Ow, ow, aw. Ah. Ah. Don't hit me. Don't hit me. Don't hit me anymore. Xian Huang's temper flared up. Regardless of whether the person in front of her was the heavenly Tao or not, she would beat him up first. Fortunately, this fellow was still bound by hundreds and thousands of invisible heavenly locks by the heavenly Tao. His movements were not that nimble after being beaten up. Heavenly Tao wailed pitifully a few times and scrambled away from the Tyrannosaurus. Xian Huang, let me tell you, don't think that you can be so disrespectful to me just because I dote on you. Don't come over. Tiandao widened his eyes and stretched out a hand to block in front of Xian Huang. Okay. You tell me, what should I do? As long as you don't bring Nitty in here to cause trouble and kill that sacred beast, I will promise you anything. Chapter 4739. Is this holy beast your relative? Xian Huang looked at Tiandao in confusion. This guy didn't seem like someone who liked to be kind. 800 years ago, there was some history, the heavenly Tao said hesitantly. Xian Huang's eyes immediately changed. With a rich expression, she sized up Tiandao from head to toe. The corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. You and him. What? Tiandao looked at this guy's expression and immediately felt a chill down his spine. Put away your messy thoughts. Heavenly Tao was so angry that he was jumping up and down. We are not in the relationship you think we are. Xian Huang winked at the little old man. I understand. You understand my ass. Tiandao was so angry that he pulled her sleeve. Let's go and find those 13 old fellows to settle the score. They came uninvited and don't even want to live such a good life in the Holy Land. Xian Huang looked at him expressionlessly. I heard you mention it last time. Aren't the days of the sacred domain rather poor and desolate? It's said that you don't even have a cup of tea to drink. What poor? Tiandao stared at Xian Huang in disbelief. I'm doing this for their own good. They have already entered the transcendent God realm. In order to reach a higher level, shouldn't they work harder than anyone else? Drink what tea? Eat what rice? These are all people in the transcendent God realm. Usually, they eat a nutrition pill every year and a half. It's simple and easy, and it doesn't consume time, right? You don't know what the Holy Land is like, so don't blindly comment. Xian Huang, why did the people in the Holy Land feel so miserable? They had already risen to such a realm, so why couldn't they even eat hot soup and hot rice? Then what was the use of reaching the large success stage? Didn't they just want to live a better life? Tiandao saw that her expression was indescribable and immediately snorted unhappily. What do you know? You only know how to eat all day. That brat of yours is now a deity realm cultivator. So what if he doesn't eat for 3 or 2 months? He ate every day, every meal, and 3 meals a day. I learned everything from you too. You don't want to learn anything good, but you want to learn these useless things. Xian Huang glanced at him mysteriously. Tiandao, could it be that because of you I can't taste anything? Every time I see other people eating and showing a happy expression, I feel especially bitter in my heart. That's why they made the rule that people in the Saint Domain can't even drink tea, right? Release. Bullshit. Xian Huang shook her finger and nodded secretly. I must be telling the truth. Scram! The heavenly Tao roared in annoyance. Then, it rolled on the clouds and angrily headed toward the sea. At this moment, the 13 Saint Domain elders still didn't know that they were facing imminent danger. At this moment, they were imprisoning more than 20,000 elites of the 3 continents within their own defensive walls, using their pressure to oppress Little Tai Sui, Thin Monk, and the others. When Heavenly Tao rushed over, he happened to see this scene. He was so angry that his bun-like face scrunched up. How preposterous! He told them to cultivate properly in the Holy Land, but they came to the River of Forgetfulness to abuse their power. A bunch of reckless things. Although Xian Huang was pulled over by the Heavenly Tao, her attention was still on her little disciple. Chapter 4740. At the same time, Arbor saw that inside the defensive wall set up by Mo Lian, the 3 figures floating in the air suddenly moved. The Snake Man was the first to let out a howl. With a wave of his hand, thousands of blue waves turned into countless water spirit blades, sweeping towards Mo Lian and He Chin. The defensive wall was instantly shattered. Arbor's little face was bone-chillingly cold. He anxiously rushed to Mo Lian's side. The humanoid sacred beast seemed to have sensed something and turned his head. Seeing Arbor holding the Fushi greatsword coming at him, his eyes couldn't help but shrink. He had already experienced the power of the sacred weapon just now. Now, there was still a terrible pain in his tailbone. When he saw the Fushi greatsword, there was only one thought in his mind: I can't let this sword fall on me again. I can't let the little girl use the Fushi greatsword to cut me again. I feel that the Fushi greatsword's power is far more than this. Arbor's sword light flashed, his little face full of hostility. When the sword fell on his head, the ground suddenly shook violently. The upper body of the Snake Man in front of him expanded by several feet. With a wave of his hands, the glaciers in the underwater abyss actually shattered in an instant. Like the explosion of a star, countless ice dots came straight at him. Mo Lian's eyes shrank. He hurriedly tore open space and quickly moved to Arbor's side, blocking this fierce attack for him. His body swayed a few times. Arbor hurriedly reached out. Just as he was about to support his body, he suddenly felt a suction force suddenly lifting his whole body up. Looking carefully, it turned out that it was because Mo Lian's body was suddenly rolled up by the Snake Man's tail. And because he was firmly holding onto Mo Lian's arm, he was also dragged towards the entrance of the underwater abyss where the Snake Man was standing. Arbor's eyes flashed with a trace of fury. Hanging on to Mo Lian's body, he whispered in her ear, I'll send all of you into the star domain later. I'll explode a nameless star. The shock force may cause the star domain to be unstable. But don't be nervous, Chio will. Before he finished speaking, he felt his whole body being pulled down rapidly. At the entrance of the underwater abyss, the bottomless ice cave was like a monster opening its huge mouth, biting towards the two of them. At first, the Snake Man only wanted to suck Mo Lian into the underwater abyss. He didn't want to go in together. It wasn't easy to escape from Mo Lian's ancient Mo Lian realm. The Snake Man had a trace of fear of this kid in front of him. He only wanted to trick Mo Lian. But then he found that things were out of his control. There was an irresistible natural suction force in the abyss. Once a person entered the ice cave, they would be pulled down involuntarily. There was no way to resist that force. While the humanoid divine beast was stunned, he couldn't help but be at his wit's end. At this moment, a pure white color appeared in Qiao Mu's eyes. The entire world was now covered in the white light of the glacier. She reached out and hugged Mo Lian's neck tightly, a guarded expression on her face. Mo Lian couldn't help but feel a little helpless. He looked at her and said, Jojo. We'll be together wherever we go. Arbor reached out and knocked him on the head. You can't leave me behind again. Okay, we'll go wherever you want. Mo Lien sighed helplessly, his voice gentle. Arbor's heart calmed down a little. As long as she was with Jojo's lotus, no matter how difficult the situation was, it could be resolved. Jojo. Mo Lien reached out and stroked her hair. Chapter 47-41. Don't worry. Mo Lien smiled at her and stroked her cheek. I will protect you. How could she not be worried? Arbor stared at Mo Lien, who was just inches away from her, with a guarded expression. If you abandon me again, I will never pay attention to you again. Okay, I'll do as you say, I'll do as you say. His gaze lingered on her face for a split second, and his phoenix eyes flickered as if there were starlight swimming in them. Arbor hung onto him and breathed a sigh of relief in her heart when she heard him say this. It was fine as long as this guy didn't abandon her. In any case, she would follow him wherever he went. This ice cave in the underwater abyss was like a bottomless pit. After the two of them fell for a long time, they could only hear the sound of wind whistling by their ears. White light flickered before their eyes, and they couldn't see their surroundings clearly at all. The little stoic wanted to move her head, but she suddenly felt a strange pain assault her. Her conscience was violently shaken, and her entire body couldn't help but stiffen. Mo Lien took in all of her abnormality. He raised his hand to press down on her head, his tone still gentle as he said, Chow Chow, your soul isn't very stable. Forcing yourself in will cause fatal damage to your conscious pool. You've absorbed the power of deprivation in this underwater abyss, but the remaining mysterious power has the effect of divine sense attacks. This power will cause space to tear and become unstable. You should have felt it. The divine sense attacks surging from all directions will injure your conscience. You won't be able to withstand it in your current state. Arbor covered his mouth with her hand and glared at him with her round eyes. I'm not leaving. Her heart started beating wildly for some reason. However, Mo Lien smiled gently at her and pulled down her small hand, rubbing his lips against her palm. Jojo's conscience might be strong, but your soul isn't stable. If you continue to force yourself like this, it will cause great harm to you. I can't watch you get hurt, he whispered next to her ear. Let's make a promise, okay? I will come find you. This seabed abyss can't trap me. Even the Tower of Punishment couldn't trap me, let alone this place. Swindler, Chiao Mu was extremely flustered. She clutched his clothes with both hands and glared at him with her round eyes. What do you want to do? I won't leave. I won't leave you. Jojo, listen to me. I won't listen, I won't listen. After I deal with that stinky snake, I'll catch him and give him to you. I don't want anything. I want you to stay by my side. Arbor had a bad feeling, because Mo Lien was holding her waist with one hand, and an irresistible force was being emitted from his body. He was going to throw her out. Mo Lien. She felt an immense sense of panic. It was different from the time when she was captured in the Tower of Punishment. That time, she knew that Mo Lien had been captured by the heavenly axiom to be punished. There was always a chance for her to escape. But this time, it wasn't as simple as it seemed. In this seabed abyss, she didn't know what kind of danger was waiting for him. The sacrificial sea abyss was able to trap that human-shaped sacred beast for so many years. How would she know if it would trap Mo Lien as well? She couldn't afford to gamble and didn't want to gamble. She only wanted to be by his side, wherever they went. However, how could Mo Lien just watch as she became a target and suffered the attacks of the mysterious power in the seabed abyss? If her conscience couldn't withstand it, then he couldn't either. Don't be afraid, Mo Lien whispered in her ear. Chapter 47-42. I'll send you up. Just follow the path and keep going forward. Do you still remember the star I gave you? If the path is too dark, take out the star and shine it on it. Although I'm not by your side, my heart will definitely accompany you all the way out. I don't want it, I don't want it. Arbor hung on to him tightly. She hugged his neck and shouted anxiously and angrily, I don't want it, I don't want it. She didn't want to leave his side at all. No. Mo Lien lowered his head and kissed her heavily on the lips. Then, without waiting for her to refute, he immediately sent her soft body up. Arbor's eyes widened slightly. She felt an irresistible push coming from below her waist. Mo Lien said he was going to send her up. How could she resist? That huge force instantly pushed her away from his side. The last thing Arbor saw was Mo Lien's rapidly sinking figure. At the same time that he used the force to send her up, his body accelerated and slid down in the opposite direction. This big liar. He tricked Lord Jojo again. Arbor followed Mo Lien's pushing force and rose up involuntarily. This pushing force lasted for a quarter of an hour before it slowly disappeared. Arbor's figure didn't fall down. Instead, she stopped in midair. It was pitch black in front of her. She couldn't see the way out. Arbor didn't even think and jumped down. As a result, her body crashed into something with a dong sound. She raised her hand to touch it. It felt like something intertwined with green vines below her. She hurriedly reached out and hammered it a few times. She couldn't move it at all. Maybe it would be better if she took out a divine hammer and hammered it. Arbor hurriedly reached out to take something out of her inner world. This time, she discovered that because she had been attacked by the mysterious power of the underground abyss before, her conscience was still unstable. She couldn't even open her inner world. Arbor unfolded a wisp of blue spiritual fire in her hand. She wanted to burn a hole in the vines below her. However, after burning for a long time, he touched it and found that it was still a crisscrossing mess. His little bit of fire was not enough to burn the things that covered the ground below him. The little stoic walked dejectedly in the darkness for a while, feeling like she had landed on a circular platform. Since she couldn't go down, she could only continue to go up and see if she could think of another way to go down. Arbor's body gently leaped upwards without any hindrance. When his fingers touched an icicle, Arbor subconsciously climbed up. His body gently landed on the protruding icicle and took 2 deep breaths. His head hurt terribly, and he felt weak all over. At the bottom of the seabed abyss, he was indeed injured by that divine sense attack. The little guy took out a storage talisman from his sleeve and wanted to take out a luminous pearl. But after trying for a long time and finding that it was useless, he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. In the abyss of the sacrificial sea, even storage talismans couldn't be used. In the past, when she went out to train, she had never been as miserable as she was now. The surroundings were too cold, and she felt a bit cold. Standing on that protruding icicle, she felt a bit drowsy. I still have to find Jojo's lotus. Arbor muttered in his mind. He curled up his body and leaned against the cool ice wall. That icy touch couldn't extinguish the anxiety and worry in his heart. His body suddenly moved as he recalled what Mo Lien said to him earlier. Do you remember the star I gave you? Chapter 47-43. Why did he say this? Was it because he already knew that her conscience was severely shaken and that she couldn't use her divine conscience or even talisman energy for the time being? A heart. That's right, Mo Lien gave her a star on her birthday at the Royal Academy. Her pentagram necklace. Arbor pulled out a silver necklace from around her neck and held it in her palm. The pendant of the necklace was a pale pentagram, and the soul-calming frost jade was also hanging from it. The moon-shaped jade pendant circulated with a faint luster, reflecting the splendor of the stars beside it. The stars accompanied the moon, and the moon reflected the stars. Arbor's fingers gently caressed this star and moon. As soon as she let go, that aqua-silver pentagram leaped up in front of her eyes and emitted a gentle light. The pitch-black darkness in front of her was instantly dispersed by the light. Tiny mimicry stars leaped up everywhere, instantly illuminating this area with incomparable splendor. The little stoic reflexively closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she could clearly see the landscape of this place. Sure enough, she was standing on an ice prism protruding horizontally from the ice wall. All around her were ice boulders and ice walls. She couldn't see the end of the ceiling, and not far below her, countless old vines and vines had sealed off her path. Arbor's heart thumped fiercely. She suddenly scooped up the pentagram next to her and leaped down, landing in that area of interwoven vines again. Rotten peach blossom. Arbor suddenly shouted loudly and pounded on the path sealed by the wood spirit twice. She couldn't go down. The venerable peach blossom immortal had used countless layers of wood spirit seals to seal off her path. Even if she was at her peak, she couldn't open a seal set up by a venerable immortal, let alone now when her body was on the verge of collapse. A sense of powerlessness welled up in her heart. The most frightening thing was that when she was sent up by Mo Lien's force just now, she should have brushed past rotten peach blossom in the pitch-black cave. After she was thrown up by that force, rotten peach blossom set up layer after layer of wood spirit seals on her path, completely sealing off her path down. The two of them didn't even discuss it with her and acted on their own accord. They even cooperated with each other decisively and perfectly, leaving her in this mediocre place. Scoundrel! Scoundrel! Arbor patted the seal with reddened eyes and muttered, Mo Lien, rotten peach blossom, where did you go? Mo Lien, rotten peach blossom, get back here. She used her fingers to dig at the old vine that was as hard as iron. She sat there in a daze for a while before muttering to herself, I'm going up now. I'm going up to look for someone. I can't open this wood spirit seal, but little Tai Sui and the others should be able to. Yes, find little Tai Sui and the others. Arbor jumped up, holding a star in his hand and shining it above. She didn't know how long it had been since she fell into the bottomless pit of the sacrificial sea. Now when she looked up, she could see no light at the mouth of the cave, as if all the light had disappeared at the bottom of the icy cavern. Damned heavenly Tao! If anything happens to my disciple, I'll use your dog life to pay for it. You clearly know that she can't possibly be in any danger. Heavenly Tao rolled his eyes anthropomorphized. He put his hands on his hips and stood in front of Xian Huang. His little body was straight, and his little face was filled with solemnity. Life requires experience. If you don't experience it, how can you become stronger? In the past, when you went out for experience, didn't you go through so many difficulties and hardships? Chapter 47-44. Isn't the reason why you reached this height today because you can face any difficulties and hardships? A strict teacher produces a brilliant disciple. Xian Huang was silent for a moment, and in the next second, she kicked Tian Dao away. It was true, but she could say such big words to other people's children, but she couldn't stand it when she saw her own child suffer. Tian Dao saw her turn and go in the direction of the sacrificial sea abyss and couldn't help but sigh sadly. Getting up and brushing off the non-existent dust on his body, Tian Dao's face was faintly sad. As long as Xian Huang doesn't smash the sacrificial sea abyss and destroy any space in this realm, then no matter what she does, I can turn a blind eye to it. Tian Dao didn't want to pay attention to Xian Huang at all. She turned her head and revealed the face of a young woman, glaring at the 13 sanctuary elders who were like quails. At this time, little Tai Sui and the others could also breathe a sigh of relief. Everyone was more or less injured. The injuries on Thin Monk's body were the most frightening. There was a sword wound on his back that was so deep that his bones could be seen. The Peony Fairy was pursing her lips and applying ointment for Thin Monk with a cold face. Her cold eyes swept over the 13 elders who kept their mouths shut from time to time. Do you know your crime? Tian Dao changed his cute and cowardly appearance in front of Xian Huang and put on a serious face and questioned coldly. Who allowed you to make your own decisions and secretly come to the Forgotten River realm? So many of you transcendent realms have come over, have you greeted this old man? One of the Forgotten River elders said boldly, We didn't come here on our own. We were summoned here. Yes, just like the God-inviting talisman we, abided by the laws of the heavenly Tao, ha. Tian Dao snorted coldly. With a raise of his hand, a purple-red lightning turned into a whip shadow and tightly wrapped around the neck of the Transcendence Elder. Little Tai Sui and the others were shocked and looked in the direction of Tian Dao. At this moment, they were also feeling a little uneasy. Unfortunately, they were also a group of Transcendent Realm experts. What was even more unfortunate was that they were a group of Transcendent Realm experts who had escaped from the Punishment Tower. If even Transcendents could not come to this continent, strictly speaking, they should have ascended to the Holy Realm long ago. How dare you quibble with me? Tian Dao put one hand on his waist and made the shape of a teapot. He glared at the 13 sanctuary elders and reprimanded them as if he expected better from them. Your trip here has already caused instability in the Forgotten River realm. It's completely against the rules of the heavenly Tao. The secret technique you're using is a sinister technique left behind by the Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness to summon their ancestors. It can't be considered a proper deity-inviting talisman. The God-inviting talisman can only summon one saint-level cultivator at a time. What about you? You guys came in a group the moment you came. Who the hell could stand it? With so many transcendent realms coming, it's impossible for me to turn a blind eye to it. The elder who had the lightning whip wrapped around his neck wanted to push the whip away in fear, but he could not do so for a long time. Venerable one, the elder stammered. We know our mistakes now. Please let go of me. I swear that for the rest of my life, I will never interfere in the affairs of the juniors of the Forgotten River again. I will never step into the Forgotten River again. It's too late. Chapter 47-45. You trespassed into the Wangchuan realm and caused the realm here to become unstable. You must bear the consequences, Heavenly Tao said coldly with an ugly expression. The serious expression on this fellow's face made everyone's heart beat like a drum. There was a world of difference between the mental state of the 13 elders from the sanctuary and the mental state they were in now. The more arrogant they were before, the more cowardly they were now at their current position. As long as they didn't court death, they wouldn't die. But now, from the looks of it, the heavenly Tao wanted to punish them. Who wouldn't panic? The elder whose neck was wrapped by the lightning whip hurriedly took a few steps back and begged for mercy with a bitter expression. Supremacy, please forgive us. We were really summoned here by someone. If we were wrong, we were just careless. Splash. Long Shangyun and Long Huan emerged from the bottom of the sea one after another and saw the confrontation between the two sides. Long Shangyun's heart skipped a beat. She put down the coffin she was carrying with one hand and pinched Long Huan with the other, using her eyes to tell him not to spout nonsense later. Heavenly Tao's small body was standing in the air. Opposite him were 13 elders standing in a row like quails. Little Tai Sui, Dao Wuji, and the others were all healing their injuries. When they heard the commotion, they hurriedly turned to look. When they saw that only Long Xiangyun and Long Huan came out, disappointment flashed through their eyes. Recover quickly. Come down with me to see what's going on, little Tai Sui said to Dao Wuji, a hint of worry lingering in his heart. To be honest, the trembling of the earth and mountains below was truly worrisome. He wondered how Jojo and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal were doing. The latter's cheeky expression changed and he nodded at him with a serious expression. Yes. Supremacy. The sanctuary elder turned and saw Long Xiangyun and Long Huan. His face tightened and he hurriedly called out to them, "Where's your grandmother? Let Long Qian come out and explain." Supremacy, we did cross the boundary this time, but there's a reason for this. We were also deceived. I thought that the secret summoning technique that Dragon Clan leader used was just like the god-descending talisman. It was within the scope of the Heavenly Tao's permission. Long Xiangyun's eyes flickered as she stared coldly at the elder in front of her. With an indifferent expression, she said, "Elder, are you trying to push all the blame onto our clan leader? Useless things. So many people came, but they still couldn't solve the problem of Arbor." Only now did she truly regret that she had summoned this group of useless trash to the river of forgetfulness. Not only did she tire herself out, she had also caused her own body to be destroyed. Now, she could only possess another body to be reborn. Her granddaughter's body simply couldn't withstand her powerful divine soul. In less than 2 hours, her body would directly collapse. By then, if her soul could not be reborn from a new body, it would turn into ashes. This was obviously not what Long Qian wanted to see. "Where is Long Qian? Ask her to come out and explain herself," that elder said angrily. In fact, it was indeed her who used a secret technique to summon us here, wasn't it? Now that something like this had happened and even the Heavenly Tao had been alerted, someone had to take responsibility for this. There was no other person other than Long Qian. Long Xiangyun's face contorted slightly. Before Long Huan could speak, she fiercely grabbed his hand. Chapter 47-46. Long Xiangyun said sternly, "Clan leader Long has died in the abyss." What? Impossible. Clan leader Long really died in the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Little Tai Sui and the others looked at Long Xiangyun in confusion and frowned. How could Long Qian die so easily? Little Tai Sui and the others didn't quite believe it. Long Qian looked like a scheming person who could even plot against her own daughter and granddaughter. She didn't look like someone who would die in the sea. Besides, Jojo and the others hadn't come out after so long, but Long Xiangyun and Long Qian had come back up. This made little Tai Sui and the others feel even more uneasy. The peony fairy swallowed a pill and looked at Long Xiangyun and Long Qian coldly. "Where's Jojo?" Long Xiangyun said coldly, "Mu Qiao has fallen into the abyss. She can't come back up." So what was the point of her gathering so many elite disciples of the duo clan of Wangchuan and specially summoning the 13 elders of the sanctuary? In the end, it was all because of her, Long Qian, who used a secret technique to awaken the humanoid sacred beast in the abyss. Only then did she get rid of that troublesome guy in Arbor. So what was the point of her scheming and painstaking efforts to get these useless people to come to Wangchuan? They couldn't help at all. Not only that, but they also wanted her to take the blame and bear the wrath of the Heavenly Tao. Ha! What a whimsical idea. Little Tai Sui's eyes narrowed. He stood up and glared at Long Xiangyun. "Who are you? You're not Long Xiangyun." Long Xiangyun was stunned. Long Qian was also shocked. He didn't expect that the little celestial, who was always by Jojo's side and didn't speak much, could recognize that Long Xiangyun wasn't the real Long Xiangyun. "Long Qian, you took over your own granddaughter's body, Little Tai Sui looked at Long Qian in shock, his eyes filled with confusion. This woman was indeed a ruthless and ruthless woman. Not only was she heartless to her own granddaughter, she was even ruthless to her own granddaughter. No wonder Long Xiangyun's face was as pale as a dead person. Long Xiangyun wouldn't be able to withstand Long Qian's powerful spiritual soul. She would kill her granddaughter with her own hands. Grandmother. Long Yan finally could not hold back his tears as he cried out miserably, "I beg you, quickly come out of Xiang Yun's body. She can't hold on any longer." Long Qian was furious. One by one, two by three, all of them wanted to go against her. He really wished that a bolt of lightning would descend from the sky and strike these unfilial grandsons and granddaughters to death. Boom! Thunder roared. Long Qian's entire body tensed up. She raised her hand and threw something out, blocking the lightning that was falling from the sky. With a loud crack, the lightning struck the item that Long Qian had thrown out and split it apart. Only then did everyone see clearly that it was a top-notch coffin. However, at this moment, the coffin had already been split open by the power of the heavenly lightning. A young woman rolled out from within and landed heavily on the ground with her face facing the ground. Sister Shui Yuan. Long Qian's shrill voice echoed in everyone's ears. The woman who was lying on the ground was covered by the power of lightning that was as thin as a snake. Her entire body was slowly being torn apart by the power of the lightning. A terrifying scene played out in front of everyone. It turned out that at the critical moment, the old woman felt that the heavenly lightning was about to strike her body, so she kicked. Chapter 47-47. She immediately kicked Long Shuyuan's coffin away. At such a critical moment, Long Qian didn't have time to think about it. Her brain immediately reacted. She used Long Shuyuan to block the attack. After a few minutes, Long Shuyuan's body was torn to pieces by the lightning. His soul was shattered into pieces, and he couldn't be reassembled no matter what. Long Qian was stunned for a moment before he turned to Long Qian and shouted, "Grandmother! You!" She said that she wanted to find the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl to repair Long Shuyuan. In the end, it was all an excuse. When she kicked Long Shuyuan out to block the lightning, why didn't she think that Long Shuyuan was the future hope of the River of Forgetfulness? When she sent Long Shuyuan to his death, why didn't she think about Long Shuyuan's contributions to the River of Forgetfulness? Who did Long Shuyuan offend? Even after death, he couldn't rest in peace and was struck by lightning until he turned into ashes. At this moment, her grandmother didn't feel bad for the River of Forgetfulness for losing a great prophet and a cultivator with great talent. Long Qian's expression was a little awkward as she raised her head and looked at Tian Dao vigilantly. If Tian Dao hadn't attacked her without any explanation, she wouldn't have subconsciously kicked Long Shuyuan's coffin out to block it. How could she be blamed for this? This was an instinctive action, okay? Little Tai Sui looked at the old lady with disdain. "You're too disgusting." At this moment, the 13th elder also reacted. He quickly pointed at Long Qian and said, "Venerable one, it's her. She summoned us." Tian Dao only looked at them coldly. "You are the main culprits, and she is an accomplice. She will also be punished by Tian Dao." The 13 elders' expressions changed at the same time. 2 of the elders hurriedly turned around and fled into the distance. Their speed was very fast. In just a moment, everyone saw 2 small black dots on the sea as they shot away. Tian Dao didn't even bat an eyelid. It was formless, colorless, and tasteless. Anything in the world could be him and not him. Any drop of water in the sea could be him and not him. This was Tian Dao. These 2 elders were too laughable. Escape. Where could they escape to? Where did they belong? The heavenly Tao looked down on them coldly and said solemnly, "According to the rules of the heavenly Tao, this sovereign will punish you with 99 bolts of heavenly thunder. Those who can withstand the 99 bolts of lightning and maintain their undying bodies will be considered to have overcome this tribulation. I won't pursue this matter in the future." The faces of the Saint Domain elders turned ashen, their faces ashen. 99 heavenly thunders? Back then, during the 5 spirits' reincarnation, the heavenly thunder would at most strike down 9 times before stopping. At that time, they were struck to the point where they were on the brink of death, vomiting blood incessantly, losing more than half of their lives. But now the heavenly Tao actually said that it would send down 99 lightning punishments. Not everyone could be like Arbor, who could withstand the lightning bolts and jump around. Not everyone could be like Jojo and be tolerated by the heavenly axiom over and over again. Who had the ability to withstand 99 bolts of heavenly lightning tribulation without dying? It wasn't like he had an indestructible body made of iron. Even if they had risen to the transcendent realm now, they were still humans. Boom! A soul-shaking sound of thunder came from afar. In the blink of an eye, bolts of heavenly lightning struck the surface of the sea one after another, producing loud sounds. Tian Dao looked expressionlessly at the elders whose faces were ashen. With a flick of his finger, the 2 elders who had already flown far away were like chicks who had been grabbed by the back of their necks. Chapter 47-48. It was as if an invisible palm had pulled them all the way back from afar and flung them heavily to the ground. The heavenly lightning halos circled around the 2 of them. Everyone looked down and saw the sizzling power of lightning circling around the 2 of them, gradually climbing up to their necks. Suddenly, it rushed towards their faces. It was as if a lightning bolt had opened up on their faces, creating a long crack. The 2 elders' faces cracked from their chins to their foreheads. It was a tragic sight. Everyone silently looked away. They were shocked to find that Tian Dao was incomparably cruel. Although he acted cute on the outside, they did not expect him to be so ruthless. When he taught people a lesson, it was really impossible to guard against him. When the other elders of the sanctuary saw this, they were so frightened that their faces turned pale. At this moment, they were extremely regretful. Why did they listen to Long Qian's summons and come down to the river of forgetfulness from the sanctuary? If they continued to stay in the sacred region, diligently practicing their martial arts, and diligently cultivating their realms, then it would be impossible for an accident to offend Tian Dao in 10,000 years. Now, everyone was in a difficult position and regretted their actions. When Xian Huang found her beloved disciple, this little fellow was struggling to climb up. "Master!" When Arbor saw her, her eyes lit up. "Xiao Bao, don't worry. Master will bring you out now." Her gaze suddenly fell on her hand. "You took back Fuxi." Arbor nodded. Her body had reached its limit and could not support the power of the Fuxi sword. She had already taken it back. "Xiao Bao, your soul." Qiaomu didn't wait for Xian Huang to finish reciting before flying to her side and shaking her arm forcefully. "Master, Rotten Peach Blossom has set up a seal barrier below. Can you help me remove it?" Xian Huang looked at her little disciple's expression and could not help but feel uneasy. His little disciple's face was as calm as water, but the anxiety in his eyes couldn't lie. She was burning with anxiety. Xian Huang nodded and followed her to the wood spirit seal wall. While unlocking the seal, she consoled her little disciple, "Xiao Bao, the natural suction force in the abyss under the sea is not something that 1 or 2 people can deal with. You don't have to blame yourself." Arbor nodded and lowered his little head, his eyes fixed on the wood spirit seal that his master had opened. It had been opened. A crack had been created in the seal by his master's sword. From the center of this crack, countless spiderweb-like cracks appeared, shattering the entire seal in a matter of minutes. Such tyrannical power. Arbor took a deep breath and looked down. Even though she had mentally prepared herself, when she looked down and saw a bottomless ice reflected in her eyes, the little stoic's heart still crumbled. Nothing. There was nothing left. The rotten peach blossom and Jojo's lotus were gone. Who knew if they had gone down tens of thousands of meters? In any case, with her eyesight, she couldn't see the end of this ice cave. Little treasure. Xian Huang called out to her worriedly. This fellow's eyes were vigilant, ready to prevent the little fellow from jumping down if she took things too hard. Arbor looked up and forced a smile at Xian Huang. That smile was as ugly as a wooden carving, as if a strange mark had been carved on a wooden face. Xian Huang's heart tightened, and she reflexively grabbed Arbor. Little treasure, don't worry. Wait here. Master will go down and see what's going on. Chapter 47-49. Arbor nodded obediently. Okay. Xian Huang was truly worried when she saw that her condition wasn't good. She squeezed her small hand and said, "How about you go to the surface first and wait for Master?" Xian Huang looked at this child's expressionless face and knew that her heart was in turmoil. She absolutely couldn't be as calm and peaceful as she appeared on the surface. When she thought of Heavenly Law's many obstructions just now and then looked at her little disciple's expression, she really wished she could drag Heavenly Law over and give it a good beating. Those little friends of yours are all waiting for you up there. The little stoic was silent for a moment before peeking at her master. When Xian Huang saw this, she patted her head. Don't worry. Although this abyss of the sacrificial sea is bottomless, it can't hurt your master. Come, I'll send you up first. Xian Huang pulled Arbor's hand. Arbor instantly felt a tremendous force coming from below her, and she involuntarily flew up with her master. It felt like she was flying, but it also felt like she was tearing apart space bit by bit and teleporting over. Xian Huang was extremely fast. In a flash, she sent Arbor to the glacier entrance of the sacrificial sea abyss. Due to the huge earthquake just now, the glacier at the cave entrance had completely collapsed. Xian Huang shattered the ice that blocked their way and pulled the little stoic out of the cave entrance. Only then did the little stoic realize that the seawater only lingered around the sacrificial sea abyss and didn't pour into the cave entrance at all. Thus, she couldn't see a single drop of water below the glacier. Child. Xian Huang rubbed the little stoic's head and exhorted softly, swim up. Master will go down to take a look. I'll come up to find you soon. The little stoic nodded obediently again. She stared at Xian Huang's figure diving into the sacrificial sea abyss for a while before turning around and following the current to swim up to the surface. At this time, the seawater had already recovered its ice-cold temperature and was no longer shockingly scalding. Perhaps it was because the glacier emerged from the bottom of the sacrificial sea abyss, but the temperature of the seawater here was much lower than the surrounding currents. A trace of coolness lingered in Arbor's heart, but it couldn't suppress the fire in her heart that flared up. Long Qian. Today's matter was fundamentally caused by this deranged old woman. What kind of hatred did this old woman have for her to be so eager for her to die? In order to deal with her, he even went as far as to summon the freakish holy beast of the undersea abyss. Just to kill her in one fell swoop. A cold light flashed in Arbor's eyes. He kicked his legs and quickly swam towards the surface of the sea. 13 elders from the sacred region. 2 of them were captured by the heavenly Tao during their escape and were destroyed by humanity. As for the other 11 elders, they were currently suffering a fate worse than death. They had no idea how many bolts of heavenly lightning there were. Their flesh was torn and their bodies were charred black. They were locked in a realm by the heavenly Tao and could only endure the bolts of heavenly lightning. 28. Long she shuddered and counted in his heart. Among them, 2 elders had already fainted on the ground. However, the heavenly thunder would not sympathize with the elder who had fainted. They continued to strike the 2 pitiful fellows who had fainted on the ground until their bodies were riddled with holes and could no longer be repaired. Only then did they beat the gong to retreat. Long Qian's eyes flickered as she stood there. She stealthily took a step back, then another step back. Chapter 47:50. If she didn't run now, when would she? Looking at the aggressive manner of the heavenly Tao, could it be that after settling the score with these elders, it would immediately look for him? Long Qian couldn't help but tremble when she saw the miserable state of the 13 elders after being struck by lightning. She could feel that Long Shangyun's body was on the verge of collapsing. It seemed like she had to find a chance to leave this place and find a suitable body before Long Qian turned around and was about to leave, but she met a pair of dark, cold eyes the moment she turned around. Xiao Mu just so happened to emerge from the seawater, and she immediately saw Long Shangyun facing her, her eyes filled with astonishment. This old woman used Long Shangyun's face to make such an expression. It was really disgusting. Get out of her body. Xiao Mu swam a distance in the sea before sensing that her divine conscience had returned by quite a bit. He took out a few attack talismans from his inner world and threw them at Long Shangyun without thinking. Now that he thought about it, there must be something wrong with the abyss of the sacrificial sea. That was why he felt his consciousness tremble when he fell into the bottomless glacier. Albert took a deep breath and stared coldly at the person in front of him. Long Shangyun's body was Long Qian's soul. This old woman was now staring at Arbor with a twisted expression. It was as if she didn't expect Arbor to be able to climb out of the abyss at the bottom of the sea. This girl was really like a ghost. As Long Qian thought this, her gaze toward Xiao Mu became increasingly bizarre and twisted. How did you get out of there? Long Qian couldn't help but ask. Her voice was so sharp that everyone couldn't help but turn to look at her. Little Tai Sui and the others were originally paying attention to the elders who were suffering from the lightning tribulation. When they heard the conversation between Arbor and Long Qian, they were all delighted. Jojo was out, so they knew that their Jojo would be fine. Now, she only looked a little pale and didn't seem to be injured. Little Tai Sui quickly went to Arbor's side and looked up with a serious face. How are you? Xiao Mu looked down at him and shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Heavenly Tao also caught sight of the little stoic. This fellow looked behind her and didn't see Xian Huang, so his brows couldn't help but crease. He opened his mouth and asked seriously, "Where's Xian Huang? Why didn't she come with you?" Arbor didn't even look at him, as if he couldn't be bothered with him. The heavenly Tao could not help but feel a little stifled. He muttered to himself, "I'm so good to the little girl, but she still doesn't like me. I don't know why." "Little Tai Sui, take them to a place a little farther away," Arbor whispered to little Tai Sui. He raised his hand and pushed little Tai Sui lightly. Little Tai Sui's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately reacted. He turned his head to look around Arbor and subconsciously asked, "Why aren't your Lotus and Peach Blossom here?" Normally, when Lianhua and Lianhua heard little Tai Sui call them that, they would have jumped up and chased after him to beat him up. Now that he had been muttering to himself for a long time, other than noticing that the little stoic's expression was becoming more and more unsightly, he didn't see these 2 fellows. They'll be fine. Little Tai Sui immediately realized that he shouldn't have asked and hastily comforted him. "Don't worry. I'll go down with Endless Blade later to see what's going on." Chapter 47:51. Arbor gently nudged his small body again and used her eyes to signal for little Tice Wei and the others to move further away. It was time to settle this muddled debt with Long Qian. Arbor pursed her lips and remained silent. Her body hovered above the sea, and her icy gaze met Long Qian's trembling gaze. Then, she raised her hand slightly. At first, everyone couldn't react in time. Then, a disciple of the Wangchuan duo clan exclaimed, "See, waves. The waves are rising." Everyone turned their heads to look. Only then did they discover that on the distant horizon, a monstrous wave was rolling up to a height of several hundred feet. The stormy wave was sweeping towards them at a rather terrifying speed. The little stoic's ability to control the water spirit was truly shocking. What are you going to do?" Long Qian's heart trembled, and her pupils violently contracted. So this was Long Qian's daughter. Even if they searched the entire Wangchuan, they probably wouldn't be able to control the Sea of Wangchuan to this extent. This Long Qian's daughter had mastered the power of the water spirit to the point of perfection. It was obvious that she could command the water spirit with a single breath and use it completely. Young Master Ding stood at the back of the crowd. When he saw Arbor's actions, his eyes involuntarily flickered. The little girl was the type to seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Just like back then, when he made her mother faint as a joke and then pretended to be her, it deeply infuriated this little stoic. She stabbed him in the chest like a knife. Now that Long Qian caused Mo Lian and He Shichen to fall into the bottomless abyss at the same time, it was obvious that the little stoic wouldn't let the main culprit, Long Qian, off. This was truly courting death. Ding Yun nonchalantly curled his lips, and a faint smile flitted through his eyes. "What are you doing?" Long Qian watched as the monstrous wave came closer and closer to them, and a trace of fear involuntarily arose in her heart. This girl couldn't be thinking of summoning the power of the sea to punish the entire Wangchuan, right? Was this possible? Could she fight the entire Wangchuan realm with her strength alone? The head of the Wangchuan duo clan, Duo Chang, was so frightened that his legs turned to jelly, and he nearly fell to the ground. Looking at the huge wave in front of him, Duo Chang had a bad premonition that a disaster was about to befall him. What kind of stupid thing did he do with the Dragon Clan leader of the Forgotten River Dragon Clan? Duo Chang's face paled as he looked at the incoming wave. He hurriedly activated his defensive barrier and roared, "Get ready. What should I prepare?" As if they were facing a formidable foe, everyone activated their defensive equipment and waited for the instant the little stoic's torrential wave came crashing down. However, just as everyone was mentally prepared to give up, the monstrous waves suddenly stopped. The meandering wave drew an arc in the air and stopped right above everyone's heads. Some of the unlucky ones standing at the front could see a drop of water breaking away from the huge wave and slowly dripping down. Everyone's heart clenched tightly. It was like having a sharp sword hanging above their heads, and no one knew when it would fall. This was much more unbearable than falling behind already. The waves were suspended in mid-air, as if they were about to fall. The rolling waves stopped uniformly in front of everyone, making them feel a huge threat coming head-on. Long Qian's heart was about to jump out of her chest. She gaped and looked at Arbor, dumbstruck. So this was the ultimate power of the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. It could control an entire body of water. It could raise monstrous waves so easily. Chapter 4752. Let's talk things out. Long Qian's heart thumped wildly. Heavenly Dao's eyelids also kept twitching, and he hastily stopped her. "Little miss, don't act recklessly. Your master should be in the seabed abyss right now, right? It's not impossible to get these people back up." Arbor glanced at him coldly. "Are you sure? Heavenly Tao was instantly terrified and couldn't utter a single word because of the little stoic. Of course, he couldn't guarantee that the natural suction of the sacrificial sea's abyss had already pulled those two brats to God knows where. The bottom of the abyss was endless and connected to an unknown number of mysterious hidden spaces. Even Dark Phoenix, who could control the power of space, would find it difficult to find them within an hour. An hour later, he was going to kick Xian Huang back. Of course, this was only Heavenly Tao's wishful thinking. As for who would be kicked out in the end, Heavenly Tao himself didn't know either. The little stoic despised Heavenly Tao even more. She glared at him icily, causing Heavenly Tao's heart to feel stifled. He clearly cherished the little miss so much, so why was the little miss unwilling to give him the slightest bit of respect? Her husband had clearly reached the conditions to ascend to the holy domain long ago, but he turned a blind eye to their fooling all day long. Wasn't this friendly enough? Right now, he was merely changing her husband's training location, so why was the little miss so angry? Back at the Tower of Punishment, they could all break out of prison. A place like the seabed abyss should also be able to write. Look at little Tai Sui and the others. They were clearly the prison guards of the Tower of Punishment, but they could still break out of prison together with others. He already didn't settle old scores with them, so wasn't he being nice enough? Heavenly Tao felt indignant. He turned around and saw the little miss waving her small hand. The raging waves in front of everyone froze into ice inch by inch, freezing half of the sea's surface at an extremely fast speed. By the time Heavenly Tao reacted, he discovered that the little miss had completely frozen the rolling waves. With a bang, they shattered into powder. Heavenly Tao couldn't help but shout, "Defend!" He was so anxious that his voice cracked when he called out. The members of the Forgetful River Dragon clan and the Duo clan all turned pale with fright. They hurriedly activated their second and third layer defensive spiritual artifacts in an attempt to block the oncoming frozen powder. His entire body had been turned into a sieve by the tiny ice lumps. Duo Chang hurriedly took out a large number of defensive spirit artifacts from his inner world and activated them one by one. His pupils contracted, and the fear he felt was indescribable. "All of you stay here for me," the little stoic said coldly, her finger lightly pointing at the sky. "Run!" Long Qian finally understood what was going on. This stoic face was truly ruthless. She wanted to exterminate the remaining disciples of the River of Forgetfulness here. The originally dormant waves started rolling again, as if they were quickly lifted up by the power of her finger. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they chased after the crowd. Long Qian and the others jumped into the sea. As they swam, they couldn't help but look back. With just one glance, he could not move his eyes away. The water current behind them condensed into the shape of a transparent human figure. Arbor stood in front of this illusory figure formed by the water current and looked at Long Qian with an icy expression. With a tap of his finger, a large Fushi sword materialized in the water illusion's hand and slashed at Long Qian's back. Chapter 47-53. What kind of godly skill is this? Everyone was shocked as they stared fearfully at the wave that had taken the shape of a human. The waves formed a huge shadow that covered the sky and the sun, blocking out the sunlight in front of everyone. Arbor stood in front of the shadow and pointed his finger at it. A Fushi sword appeared in the hand of the shadow, and it slashed towards Long Qian's back. Long Qian was running for her life, but she couldn't avoid the shadow's attack. She thought that the little girl wouldn't be able to hurt her with her low-level divine realm cultivation. However, she forgot that this was Long Shangyun's body. With Long Shangyun's cultivation, there was no way she could block Arbor's attack. Her body fell forward into the sea. Long Qian spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body was soaked in cold water, and she shivered. Her soul was shaking, and her head was hurting. She couldn't hold it in. When she got out of the water, she spat out another mouthful of blood, and her face changed. Arbor looked at Long Qian, who was struggling in the water, expressionlessly. His eyes were filled with coldness. She and Long Qian were like fire and water. Their hatred was irreconcilable. If Long Qian still had some hope for Arbor in the beginning, as they got to know each other better, she no longer had any blood ties with Arbor. Forget about Arbor, just look at how she treated Long Shangyun. She had watched her granddaughter grow up, and she took over Long Shangyun's body just like that. She didn't even care if Long Shangyun's body would break. This cold-blooded woman wouldn't do such a thing to her grandchild, even if she had any feelings for her grandchild. Get out of the way. Long Qian gestured at the mermen around him. Everyone did not need him to remind them. They hid wherever they could. Some sharp-witted mermen had already sunk into the water and fled for their lives back to their homeland. There was only one thought in everyone's mind: get away from this little fiend. The farther, the better. He commanded the shadow formed by the waves and chased after Long Qian, who was trying to escape. Everyone's eyelids twitched. The shadow raised the sword in his hand and swung it down. Boom! Long Qian's back was hit by a wave, and she fell into the sea again. She didn't pop her head out of the water for a long time. Long Xia opened his mouth wide, unable to make a sound for a long time. In the blink of an eye, he saw Mu Xingchen rushing over with a solemn expression. Long Shi hurriedly said, "Co-cousin. Please persuade him." Mu Xingchen didn't even bother to look at Long Hua. Although I didn't see what happened in the abyss of the sacrificial sea, I can roughly guess what happened. Long Qian, ask yourself. Is what Long Qian did to Jojo fair? Does she still have any humanity? Cousin, you think I want to plead for grandmother? Long Huan could not help but laugh bitterly. I'm not shameless enough to plead for her again. I'm just worried about Shang Yun's safety. Long Huan's face was full of worry. Shang Yun won't be able to take it after being beaten up by cousin. She didn't know anything from the beginning to the end. She doesn't even know that I listened to my grandmother and came to the Snow Island to approach my cousin. Cousin, I hope you can persuade her. Please ask cousin to be merciful on account of the time she spent with Shang Yun. Mu Xingchen coldly glanced at Long Huan and shook his head. You don't understand her. You've spent so much time with her, but you still don't understand her. Chapter 47-54. It's impossible for Jojo to take out her anger on others and kill the innocent. Mu Xingchen looked at Long Yun indifferently. Her actions won't hurt Long Shangyun. She probably just wants to drive Long Qian's soul out of Long Shangyun's body. Is that so? Delight flashed through Long Yun's eyes after his shock. However, Mu Xingchen no longer paid any attention to him. His gaze was fixed on his sister from afar. Sikong Fuling rushed to Mu Xingchen's side and humped softly. The little stoic is still the same. She gives people the feeling that she's very unreasonable. If you don't know her well, who would know her intentions? Mu Xingchen didn't speak. Sikong Fuling stole a glance at him and muttered, "There's a soft heart under that stoic face." I already knew when we were in the Mystic Beast Forest in the Lower Star Domain. Although Mu Xingchen didn't say anything, a faint smile flashed through his eyes. On the other side, Long Qian's soul couldn't stay in Long Shangyun's body any longer after being slashed a dozen times by Arbor's figure formed from water. She hastily flew out. When Long Shangyun's body sank into the sea without her noticing, the wood spirit whip in Arbor's hand flashed and coiled around her body, pulling and flinging her. Long Shangyun's limp body was sent flying towards Long Huan. Long Yun hastily swam forward and caught his sister that Arbor tossed over. He glanced at Arbor with a complicated expression. Meanwhile, Long Qian's soul wanted to escape the instant it left her body. However, Arbor had already calculated and set up an isolation talisman formation the moment he pulled her soul out of Long Shangyun's body. No matter how good Long Qian was at escaping, she couldn't escape from her formation for the time being. Long Qian screamed anxiously. Her soul flickered in and out of existence in midair as if it would disappear completely in the next second. Heavenly Dao suddenly said, "This person acted recklessly and used her clan's secret technique to secretly summon a holy region elder. This noble one must punish her." Arbor coldly rejected him. "You're no longer needed here." Heavenly Dao, it felt like the little stoic was extremely disdainful of him. When it was time for you to go on stage, you dilly-dallied and didn't go on stage. When it's not your time to speak, you're randomly interrupting. The little stoic coolly swept a glance at Heavenly Law. She pointed with a finger, and that gigantic wave silhouette in midair abruptly descended. The illusory Fushi sword in his hand revealed a shapeless pressure that came from the ancient times, and it instantly shocked everyone present to the point they went perfectly silent. When Xian Huang jumped out of the abyss, her heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Looking at the little fellow's pale face and fluctuating spirit, he was secretly using the power of the Fushi greatsword again. Why was this child so worrisome? She couldn't stop worrying if she didn't take a look at him. By the time Dark Phoenix flew over, the sword under the little stoic's command had already heavily chopped down. The seawater immediately split open from the middle, as if it had been split into a cross-section. Between the two sections, the seawater gushed out like two waterfalls in the direction of the underwater abyss. Heavenly Dao wailed as he rushed forward, shouting, "Little stoic, you can't destroy things like this." Fuck, how could she take out a sage weapon and randomly chop it, splitting mountains and splitting seas, cutting a large fissure in the sea of forgetfulness? From the looks of it, he didn't know if he could patch up this large fissure even if he replenished it for 3 years, ha woo woo. The little stoic was too deceitful. Chapter 47-55. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at him. When Tiandao's eyes met her clear and cold moon-like eyes and her desolate expression, his heart couldn't help but sink. This little girl could it be that she wanted to exterminate the entire river of forgetfulness? This matter was serious. Tiandao was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He looked up and saw Xian Huang's head popping up. "Quick, quick. Aya, you're finally back. Hurry and bring your brat back. I almost had a heart attack because of her. Quick, stop fooling around." Splitting mountains and splitting seas and diverting water to fill up the river of forgetfulness isn't a joke. Xian Huang grabbed the fussing Tiandao and sternly shouted, "Calm down. Fuck, who's the one who's restless now?" "It's your disciple." Tiandao's gaze abruptly landed beside the little stoic. Whose spirit is this?" At this time, a spirit that was so faint it was almost transparent slowly popped out beside the little stoic. The little stoic recognized it at a glance. It was Senior Long Xuanji. When Long Qian saw Ancestor Xuanji appear, he immediately hid behind her and stammered, "Ancestor, save me." However, Senior Xuanji didn't even look at Long Qian. His gaze landed on the little stoic. He gently said, "Child, stop for now. Your soul is very unstable right now. Why aren't you retrieving this holy weapon?" Xian Huang frowned slightly and floated to her little disciple's side. She glanced suspiciously at Long Xuanji's soul and thought, "This soul is already so faint that it's almost transparent. It should only be a small wisp of soul and will disperse after 15 minutes at most." The little stoic was a person who clearly distinguished gratitude and grudges. The one who had a grudge against her was Long Qian, while Long Xuanji had always treated her with kindness. This ancestor of the Xuanji family had played an indelible role in pushing her forward on the path of her growth. She couldn't act like she was indifferent to others. Hence, she put away the Fuxi sword. However, the huge projection that was formed from the ocean currents was still in midair. It was just that it was frozen and motionless at this time, and not a single drop of water fell. The little stoic bowed respectfully to Long Xuanji and said to herself, "Senior, out of the 103 first-generation disciples of the Xuanji school, we've already found more than 80 people." Long Xuanji's eyes shone with gratification. He nodded and his tone became more relaxed. "Second sect master. Your whole family is stupid." He had said this in front of Long Xuanji's soul projection in the Xuanji mystic realm. Now that Long Xuanji had said this in front of his half-conscious soul, Senior Xuanji looked a little confused. Previously, in Senior Tianjizi's secret realm, I helped you teach Senior Tianjizi's disciple, Senior Tiantuzi, a lesson. When Long Xuanji heard this, a trace of joy flashed across his eyes. "Is that so? Good child, you really didn't waste the heavy responsibility I entrusted to you. You've completed so many things so quickly." As expected of the second-generation sect master of the Xuanji school. Wait a minute, she didn't seem to have come out to chat idly with the little stoic. She still had something important to say. Otherwise, her soul would dissipate with the wind. Strange, why was he inexplicably led astray by the little girl's words? Long Xuanji hastily organized his thoughts and said bluntly, "Second sect master, please spare the merfolk in the land of forgetfulness. These disappointing things can't be helped by rotten mud, but they're still my clansmen after all." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.